Hello guys, welcome to Pika Fiction. So in this video, we will see what if Ash's reward for winning the Alola League was a harem of all the island girls. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Weight of the Wreath. The world was a wall of sound, a tidal wave of human joy that crashed over the floodlit arena of Manalo Stadium. It pressed in on Ash Ketchum from all sides, a physical force of cheers and applause. On his shoulder, Pikachu's fur was puffed out, its own high-pitched cries lost in the roar. Opposite them, Tapu Koko hovered, its warrior's form radiating an ancient, grudging respect before it dissolved into a shimmer of golden light, leaving nothing but the echo of its power. The announcer's voice, amplified to the heavens, boomed through the stadium. He's done it. Against all odds, the challenger from Pallet Town, Ash Ketchum, has defeated Professor Kukui and emerged as the first-ever champion of the Alola League. Ash's knees felt weak. He dropped to one hand on the scorched earth of the battlefield, the other clutching the brim of his hat. He wasn't just tired, he was hollowed out, every ounce of strategic thought and emotional energy poured into the final, explosive clash between Pikachu's 10 million-volt Thunderbolt and Tapu Koko's Guardian of Alola. His heart hammered against his ribs, not with exhaustion, but with a feeling so immense he couldn't name it. It was bigger than victory. It was a sense of arrival, a feeling that every battle, every loss, every friend he'd ever made had funneled down into this single, perfect moment. Professor Kukui strode across the field, his usual easy grin stretched wide. He clapped a hand on Ash's shoulder, hoisting him to his feet. "You did it, Ash." "Who?" "You really did it," he shouted over the din, his voice thick with pride. Ash just nodded, a breathless laugh escaping him. He looked at Pikachu, who met his gaze with bright, intelligent eyes. They had done it. Together. The hours that followed were a blur of flashing cameras, handshakes, and a trophy presentation that felt surreal. The champion's wreath, a beautiful circlet of intertwined silver and gold leaves native to Mount Lanakila, was placed on his head by the 4 island kahunas. It was heavier than he expected, cool against his skin. The crowd's adoration was a warm blanket, but through it all, he felt a strange, quiet hum resonating from the wreath, a thrum of energy that seemed to be syncing with his own heartbeat. By the time the stadium lights began to dim and the last of the crowd shuffled out into the Alola night, a comfortable exhaustion had settled over Ash and his friends. They were gathered in a private lounge overlooking the now empty stadium, Lily, clutching her bag with a nervous energy that never quite left her, Mallow, arms crossed, a proud, satisfied smile on her face, Lana, watching the moon rise over the water with her usual serene focus, and Kiawe, whose fiery intensity was banked for once into a coal of quiet respect. "I still can't believe it," Lily said, her voice soft. "You're the champion." "He earned it," Kiawe stated, the words carrying the weight of a decree. "He fought with the heart of a Wella volcano." Mallow punched Ash's arm playfully. "Yeah, now you have to come to the family restaurant for a victory feast. On the house." Ash laughed, the sound easy and genuine. "You got it, Mallow." He felt a profound sense of peace. This was his family, this strange, wonderful, chaotic group of people who had taken him in and shown him a new way of living, a new way of connecting with Pokémon. It was Professor Kukui who broke the spell. He entered the room, his lab coat off, looking more serious than Ash had ever seen him. With him were the 4 kahunas, Hala of Mele Mele, Olivia of Akala, Nanu of Ula Ula, and the young, formidable Hapu of Pony. Their presence shifted the atmosphere in the room. From celebration to ceremony. Ash, Hala began, his voice a low, resonant baritone that commanded attention. "The people of Alola, and we, the kahunas, thank you. You have shown us a fire and spirit that has reminded us all of the bond between human and Pokémon. Your victory was not just a personal one," Olivia added, her gaze sharp and appraising. "It has awakened something in Alola. Something that has been dormant for a very long time." Nanu, ever the pragmatist, grunted from the corner. Get to it, Hala. The kid's tired. Hala inclined his head. Indeed. Ash, the title of champion, is a new one for Alola, a modern concept for a modern league. But the role you have won is ancient. The true title is Alakai Nui, the Great Guardian. Ash's brow furrowed. Great Guardian? I thought I was the champion. You are, Kukui said, stepping forward. But you're also more. The first official league champion was prophesied to be the one to restore a sacred tradition. A tradition to unify the islands, not just in spirit, but in power. A way to ensure Alola's strength and prosperity for generations to come. Ash looked around at his friends, then back at the kahunas. He felt the weight of the wreath on his head again, a low thrum of energy now impossible to ignore. What tradition? It was Hapu who spoke, her voice clear and strong despite her youth. The formation of the Alia Alakai. The champion's circle. She paused, her eyes sweeping over the group. The Alakai Nui does not stand alone. They are the center, the heart. But the heart cannot pump blood without veins. The circle is formed by a sacred bond, a pact made between the champion and chosen representatives from the islands, individuals who embody the spirit of their home. A knot of confusion tightened in Ash's stomach. Representatives? Like ambassadors? More, Hala said, his expression solemn. A bond of life. Of spirit. An oath of unity, loyalty, and shared strength, blessed by the Tapu themselves. A bond that connects your life force, your very aura, to theirs. In older times, this bond was often sealed through marriage, to create a new ruling line, a dynasty of guardians. In our time, the nature of the bond is for the chosen to decide. But it is no less permanent. No less profound. The room fell silent. The implications of Hala's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Ash felt a cold dread creep up his spine that had nothing to do with any Pokemon battle he'd ever fought. This wasn't about being a trainer. This was something else entirely. The kahunas of Mele Mele, Akala, and Pony have each chosen a candidate, Olivia announced, her voice unwavering. Someone we believe has the strength, heart, and spirit to uphold this sacred duty. Hala looked directly at Lily. From Mele Mele Island, I have chosen the one who journeyed from fear to courage, who embodies the spirit of growth and a fierce love for her family. I have chosen Lily. Lily gasped, her face draining of color. Her hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a mixture of terror and something else, something unreadable. Olivia's gaze fell upon Mallow. From Akala Island, I have chosen the one whose heart is as bountiful as the life of our island, whose hands nurture and provide for all who come to her. A spirit of community and care. I have chosen Mallow. Mallow's playful smile vanished. She took a step back, her arms falling to her sides. Her expression became a mask of stunned disbelief, her mind visibly racing to process the declaration. Finally, Hapu looked at Lana. From Pony Island, a choice guided not just by me, but by the will of Tapu Fini. I have chosen the one whose spirit is as deep and mysterious as the ocean itself, who hears the whispers of the water and holds a quiet, unbreakable strength. I have chosen Lana. Lana, for the first time, looked away from the window. Her usually calm face was a storm of complex emotion. Her hands clenched into small fists at her sides. Ash's head was spinning. He looked from Lily's pale, shocked face, to Mallow's wide-eyed confusion, to Lana's trembling stillness. This wasn't a reward. This was a sentence. He was being asked not just to accept a responsibility for himself, but to ask 3 of his closest friends to tie their lives to his in a way he couldn't begin to comprehend. Wait, Ash said, his voice strained. He took the wreath off his head, holding it in his hands. It felt 100 times heavier now. You can't just decide that for them. This isn't a prize. They're my friends. They have their own lives, their own dreams. This is not a command, Ash, Hapu said firmly. It is an offering. A sacred request. And the choice does not belong to you, or to us. It belongs to them. We understand this is a shock, Kukui said, his voice gentle. This tradition is from a different Alola. But the power it represents is real. The bond it forges is real. It would make you for the protectors of this region in a way no one has been for 500 years. The kahunas bowed their heads and departed, leaving behind a silence more deafening than the roar of the crowd had ever been. Kukui lingered for a moment. Talk to each other, he advised softly, before following them out, leaving the 6 friends alone in the vast, quiet room. The air was thick with things unsaid. Kiawe, sensing the monumental gravity of the moment, looked from Ash to the girls, his face a mask of conflict. Will wait outside, he said, giving Ash a nod of solidarity before quietly exiting the room. Now it was just them. The 4 at the center of this ancient storm. I don't accept this, Ash said immediately, his voice low and fierce. He placed the wreath on a nearby table as if it were cursed. I won't let them put this on you. It's not right. Mallow finally found her voice, a sharp, incredulous laugh bursting from her. Not right? Ash, did you hear them? A life bond? Or whatever. What does that even mean? Is this some kind of crazy royal wedding proposal? Lily was trembling, her gaze fixed on the floor. They can't be serious, she whispered. My mother. Gladden. I can't. Lana said nothing, but she walked to the window, placing a hand on the cool glass. She seemed to be looking past her reflection, out at the dark, churning sea. It doesn't matter if they're serious, Ash insisted, his jaw tight. The answer is no. I'm the champion, fine. I'll battle anyone to protect Alola. But this? Tying you all to me? That's not a power, it's a cage. I'd never ask that of you. His decisiveness, his immediate rejection on their behalf, seemed to break the spell of shock for a moment. Mallow looked at him, her expression softening. Lily risked a glance up, her eyes meeting his for a fleeting second. Ash. Mallow started, her voice more measured now. This is a lot. I don't even know what to think. I need to go home. I need to talk to my dad. She turned and left without another word, her stride full of a purpose that belied her inner turmoil. Lily was next. She took a deep, shuddering breath. I have to go to Ether Paradise. I need to speak with my mother. She looked at Ash, her eyes filled with a storm of fear and apology. I'm sorry, Ash. This is all. It's not your fault, Lily, he said gently. Go. We'll figure this out. She nodded and practically fled the room. Now, only Lana remained, her back still to him. Ash walked over to stand beside her, looking out at the same dark ocean. The silence stretched between them, comfortable as it always was. You don't have to do this, Lana, he said quietly. Any of you. She turned her head, her deep blue eyes seeming to search his. What if it's not about doing what we have to, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. What if it's about doing what we're called to do? Before he could respond, she too turned and walked away, leaving Ash alone with the heavy silver and gold wreath, the silent stadium, and the impossible weight of a victory that had just cost him more than he ever imagined. The Ether Paradise ferry was a vessel of pristine white and cold efficiency, a stark contrast to the churning emotions in Lily's heart. As the gleaming structure of the foundation rose from the sea, she clutched the straps of her bag, the one Nebby used to nestle in, a habit she'd never quite broken. The conversation with Hala replayed in her mind, a dizzying loop of honor, duty, and terrifying intimacy. A life bond. A pact. She found her mother in the main conservation area, observing the Pokémon with a serene, detached air that always set Lily on edge. It was the same calm Luzman had projected before the Nihilego incident, a placidity that hid a tempest beneath. Glad Ion was there too, leaning against a railing, his arms crossed, Sylvie standing silent and watchful at his side. He had clearly been told. His scowl was even deeper than usual. Lily, Luzman said, her voice smooth as glass. I have been informed of the Kahuna's archaic proposal. She turned, and her smile didn't reach her eyes. You will, of course, be declining. It's preposterous. Tying the future of the Ether Foundation's heir to a provincial ceremony. Unacceptable. It was a command, not a suggestion. The old Luzman. The one who decided, who controlled. A familiar wave of fear and inadequacy washed over Lily, but it was followed by something new, something forged in the sunlight of Melee Melee and the trials of Pony Island. It was the echo of Ash's voice in her head, you can do it, Lily. And what if I don't want to decline, she asked, her voice shaking only slightly. Glad Ion pushed off the railing. Lily, be serious. This isn't some fairy tale. A sacred bond. It's a chain. You've just found your freedom. Don't throw it away. Is it a chain? She shot back, surprising even herself with her fire. Or is it a shield? Glad Ion, you weren't there. You didn't see the way they spoke of it. The power. Ash, he became champion to protect Alola. This tradition is meant to help him do that. To help us do that. Protect Alola? Luzman scoffed lightly. That's what the Ether Foundation is for, my dear. We have the resources, the technology. We don't need ancient rituals and superstition. Your technology didn't stop the Ultra Beasts, Lily said, the words falling from her lips before she could stop them. The moment they were out, she flinched, expecting the icy rage. But Luzman just looked at her, a flicker of that old, terrifying obsession in her eyes. An anomaly we have since learned from. Lily, I am your mother. I am trying to protect you. You tried to protect me before, Lily said, her voice dropping, filled with the pain of that memory. You tried to protect me by freezing Pokémon, by trying to control a power you didn't understand. Ash, he doesn't try to control power. He works with it. He trusts his Pokémon, and he trusts his friends. He trusted me when I couldn't even touch a Pokémon. She looked from her mother's calculating gaze to her brother's worried frown. He taught me what strength is. It's not about being unafraid. It's about being terrified and doing what's right anyway. The Kahunas chose me because they said I journeyed from fear to courage. Maybe this is the next step on that journey. By tying yourself to him. Glad Ion demanded. What about your own path? Your own future? Maybe, she whispered, looking down at her hands, he's part of that path. The admission was terrifying, liberating. It was the truest thing she had said all night. She loved her home. She loved her family, flawed as it was. And she was beginning to understand that she loved the boy who had shown her how to be brave. If this was a way to stand by his side, to help him carry a burden he was already willing to bear for everyone, then how could she call it a cage? She looked up, meeting her mother's stunned gaze. This is my choice to make. Not yours. The air in Mallow's family restaurant was thick with the comforting smells of spices and grilled meat, a scent that had been home for her entire life. But tonight, it did little to soothe her. Her father sat across from her at their family table, his large, gentle hands wrapped around a mug of tea, his brow furrowed in thought. She had explained everything, the words tumbling out of her in a rush of confusion and anxiety. A champion circle, he said, testing the phrase. Hala and Olivia, they don't do things lightly. Dad, they're talking about a life bond. Mallow exclaimed, running a hand through her green hair. They want me to tie my future to ashes. What about the restaurant? What about you? I can't just abandon everything. Her father took a slow sip of his tea. Mallow, he said calmly. Look around. This restaurant, what is it for? To feed people, obviously, she said, exasperated. Is that all? We feed their bodies, yes. But we also give them a place to rest. To celebrate. To be together. We are a part of the community of Akala. We nurture it. He leaned forward, his expression serious. What Olivia chose you for, it is the same thing, just bigger. You have always had a gift for bringing people together, for caring for them. You do it every day without even thinking. She sees that. She sees that your spirit of care could extend beyond this kitchen, beyond Paniola town. It could help nurture all of Alola. His words hit her like a physical blow. He wasn't telling her what to do. He was just showing her a picture of herself that she had never seen so clearly. Her passion wasn't just cooking, it was hospitality, in the truest sense of the word. It was making people feel welcome, safe, and nourished. But, a bond with Ash, she murmured, the thought still sending a jolt through her. And Lily, and Lana, as a team. Ash is a good boy, her father said simply. A strong boy. He eats enough for 5, but his heart is good. He respects you. He listens to you. Is it such a terrible fate to be bonded to someone like that? To work alongside your friends to protect your home? He smiled gently. This restaurant will be here. I'm not going anywhere. Your duty to your family, to our legacy, maybe it just got bigger, Mallow Mouse. Maybe you're being asked to set a table for the whole region. Mallow looked down at her hands, calloused from years of working with knives and hot pans. They were strong hands. Capable hands. The idea was still terrifying. A life of politics and fighting alongside the champion instead of perfecting new recipes. But her father's words had reframed it. It wasn't about abandoning her passion, it was about expanding it. Nurturing Alola. The thought was audacious, overwhelming, and it lit a small, determined fire in her chest. Pony Island was wild, a place of stark cliffs and churning seas, where the line between the physical and spiritual worlds was thin. Lana stood with Hapu on the cliffs overlooking the vast Pony Canyon, the wind whipping her blue hair across her face. She didn't need to explain the situation, Hapu already knew. She had been the one to deliver the message. Tapu Finis will is not always gentle, Hapu said, her voice steady against the wind. It asks much of those it chooses. Why me? Lana asked, her voice quiet but clear. Lily is brave. Mallow is caring. I am just quiet. Quiet is not the same as weak, Hapu countered, turning to face her. You do not feel the need to fill the world with noise. You listen. You feel. You told me once that you can feel the currents of the ocean, the moods of the Pokémon within it. That is a rare gift, Lana. A sacred one. Tapu Fini does not choose a voice. It chooses a heart that can understand its own. Hapu gestured out to the turbulent water where the ruins of the Seafolk village lay submerged. That power you feel, this bond would amplify it. The Alia Alakai is not just a bond between the 4 of you. It is a bond with Alola itself. With the Tapu. With the land and the sea. Ash is the heart, the fire. But the fire needs the deep, calm water to balance it. To temper it. You would be that balance. Lana closed her eyes, turning her face to the sea spray. She thought of Ash. Of his endless energy, his explosive battle style, his loud, infectious laugh. He was a sun, burning so brightly. And she was the tide, pulled by the quiet moon. Hapu was right. He needed balance. She thought of the day they'd sought the red orb, of how he trusted her completely to navigate the treacherous waters, of the look of sheer awe on his face when her Primarina had summoned its vast ocean of power. He never saw her silence as a weakness. He saw it as a strength she hadn't yet fully unleashed. The kahunas had called it a pact. An oath. To Lana, it felt like something else. A current. A powerful, inexorable current pulling her toward a new destiny. A destiny intertwined with the boy who was like the sun and the friends who were like the earth and the sky. To deny it would be like a river trying to flow uphill. It was simply, the way. I understand, Lana said, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. She opened her eyes, and they were as clear and deep as the Pony Abyss. The sun was bleeding orange and purple across the horizon when Ash saw them approaching on the beach near Kukui's lab. First Mallow, her stride determined. Then Lily, her expression nervous but resolute. And finally Lana, moving with her usual quiet grace. They converged on him where he sat in the sand, skipping stones across the placid water, Pikachu dozing at his side. He stood up, his heart pounding. "You don't have to do this," he said again, the words feeling weak and useless now. It was Mallow who spoke first, stopping before him, her hands on her hips. "You're right, I don't have to," she said, her voice firm. "I choose to. My whole life has been about feeding and caring for people in my restaurant. My dad helped me see that this is the same thing, just on a bigger scale. Akala needs this. And, our team needs it. I'm in, Ash. As long as you promise to always eat your vegetables." A small, shaky laugh escaped Ash. "I promise." Then Lily stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her. "I spent so long being afraid," she said, her voice gaining strength with every word. "You taught me how to be brave. You, and Pikachu, and everyone. My mother, she wanted to make this choice for me. To protect me. But I'm done being protected. I want to be a protector. I want to stand with you, and help you carry this. It's my choice. To be strong enough to protect my home, my family, and my friends." Her gaze met his, and in her eyes, he saw not just courage, but a deep, unwavering affection that made his breath catch. Finally, Lana came to a stop beside them. She looked at Ash, a small, rare smile on her lips. "The sea has a current," she said simply. "And it is flowing in this direction. Tapu Fini wishes it. I wish it. You are the fire, Ash. I will be the water. We need both." Ash looked at the three of them, at the incredible strength and resolve in their faces. They weren't being forced. They weren't being sacrificed. They were choosing. They were choosing him, and they were choosing Alola. The overwhelming weight on his shoulders didn't disappear, but it changed. It was no longer a burden to be borne alone. It was a weight to be shared. Awe and a fierce, protective loyalty washed over him. I don't know what to say," he stammered, feeling more humbled in this moment than he had in victory. "I won't let you down. I swear it." As if summoned by their oath, the air grew still. The sky, now a deep twilight purple, began to glow. 4 points of light, red, pink, yellow, and purple, streaked across the heavens, converging on the ancient ruins at the edge of the beach. The Tapu. They walked together toward the lights, toward the silent, waiting stones. As they stepped into the center of the ruins, the 4 guardian deities materialized, their otherworldly forms humming with power. They circled the 4 friends, a whirlwind of spiritual energy. Hala's voice seemed to echo on the wind. "The Alea Alakai is formed." The champion's wreath, which Ash had brought with him and now held, began to glow with a brilliant white light. At the same time, a soft, golden aura ignited around Ash, Lily, Mallow, and Lana. The Tapu let out a unified cry, and from each of them, a thread of pure, colored light shot forth, weaving into the golden auras. Then, a single, shimmering golden thread of light extended from Ash's heart, branching out to connect to Lily, Mallow, and Lana, linking them all together in a visible web of pure energy. Ash felt it. A surge of power, of warmth, of presence. He could feel Mallow's steadfast resolve, Lana's deep calm, Lily's blossoming courage, all pouring into him, as his own fiery determination flowed back into them. It wasn't a cage. It was a connection. A circuit of power, of trust, of love. On a distant cliffside overlooking the beach, a figure lowered a pair of high-tech, thermographic binoculars. The image in the lenses was stark, for human heat signatures, blazing like suns, interconnected by a fifth, impossibly bright energy source. The figure was cloaked in black, tactical gear, a stark contrast to the natural beauty of Alola. A sterile, synthesized voice spoke into a comms unit, devoid of all emotion. Director Silas. It's real. The aura symbiosis is confirmed. The Alakai Nui has formed his circle. A pause. They are a confluence of primal energy, just as the texts predicted. A significant threat. The voice that crackled back was calm, cultured, and laced with absolute authority. A threat is only a threat if it is allowed to fester, Kalen. It is a sickness. And we are the cure. Maintain observation. The Order of Silence will prepare the first treatment. The figure on the cliff nodded, even though no one could see. Understood. As the light of the Tapu's blessing faded, leaving the four friends standing together under the stars, bound by a power older than Alola itself, the observer melted back into the shadows, a harbinger of a cold, silent war that was about to begin. Chapter 2, The Akalan Echo. The morning after felt different. Ash woke not to the gentle Alolan sun filtering through Kukui's windows, but to a low, persistent hum in the back of his mind. It wasn't a sound, it was a feeling, a resonance. He sat up, the sheet pooling around his waist, and for a moment, he simply listened to it. It was a chord, composed of 3 distinct notes. One was a steady, earthy warmth, like soil after a rain, Mallow. Another was a deep, cool current, vast and serene, Lana. The third was a fragile but determined light, like the first star at dusk, full of hope and a touch of anxiety, Lily. And at the center of it all was his own fire, his own energy, no longer just a solitary flame but a sun that their presences orbited and fed. Pikachu, curled at the foot of the bed, stirred and blinked at him, its ears twitching. It seemed to feel it too, tilting its head as if listening to a distant song. Ash swung his legs over the side of the loft bed. He felt clearer. The usual chaotic storm of thoughts in his head was still there, thoughts of training, of what to eat for breakfast, of the next adventure, but they were organized, calmer. It was as if Lana's serenity had bled into him, smoothing the rough edges of his own restless energy. He flexed his hands, a surge of power tingling under his skin. It wasn't just his power anymore. It was theirs. He padded downstairs to find Professor Kukui at the kitchen counter, looking over a datapad with a grim expression. Professor Burnett was beside him, a hand on his shoulder. They both looked up as he approached. "Morning, Ash," Kukui said, his voice lacking its usual boisterous energy. "How are you feeling?" The question was loaded. He wasn't just asking if Ash was rested. Connected, Ash answered honestly, pouring himself a glass of juice. "It's a lot. But it's not bad. It feels right." Burnett smiled, a genuine, relieved expression. "That's good to hear." Ancient texts on aura are notoriously vague. Most describe the Alea Alakai in poetic terms, a heart with 4 chambers, a star with 4 points. We weren't sure what the tangible effects would be. "It feels like I can hear them," Ash mused, staring out the window toward the ocean. "Not their thoughts. More like, their feelings. Mallow is determined. Lana is calm. Lily is, worried, but trying to be brave." Before Kukui could respond, Ash's Rotom Dex zipped into the room, its screen flashing red. "Incoming call. Incoming call for Mallow. Priority Alpha. BZZZT. A moment later, Mallow's face appeared on the screen. She was in her room, hair still slightly messy from sleep, but her expression was one of dawning horror. In the background, a faint, deep rumbling could be heard, vibrating through the device's small speaker. "Dad," she was saying, her voice tight with panic. "What's going on? I can feel the ground shaking." A man's voice, strained and full of static, crackled back. "Mallow. It's a stampede. Pokémon, hundreds of them. Tauros, Rhyhorn, Donphan, they're running wild. Tearing through the jungle, heading right for Paniola town. We're trying to evacuate the restaurant, but..." The connection fizzled, replaced by a terrifying crash. "Dad!" Mallow screamed. The feed cut out. The calm in the room shattered. The earthy, steady note in Ash's mind flared with raw, primal fear. He felt Mallow's panic as if it were his own, a punch to the gut. "Kukui," Ash said, his voice dropping an octave, all trace of the sleepy young man gone. He was the champion now. The Alakai Nui. "Get me to Akala. Now." Kukui was already moving, grabbing a set of keys and a comms unit from a nearby hook. "Burnett, get on the horn with Olivia. Tell her we're inbound. The champion's circle is responding." "The circle's first duty," Burnett murmured, her fingers already flying across a console. As Ash grabbed his hat and vest, Pikachu leaping to his shoulder, his Rotom Dex buzzed again. Lily's face appeared, pale and wide-eyed. "Ash. Mallow just called me, she couldn't get through to you. What's happening?" Simultaneously, Lana's icon popped up. Her message was a simple text: "Mallow is in danger. Get to the marina at Hawali City," Ash commanded, his voice crisp and clear, leaving no room for argument. The resonance in his mind sharpened, the three notes of his friends locking into focus with his own. "Kukui is taking us to Akala. There's a stampede. Mallow's family is in the path." There was no hesitation. "On our way," Lily said, her voice trembling but firm. Lana's icon simply flashed a green acknowledged. This was it. Their first test. And it wasn't a game or a battle. It was a disaster. The high-speed Ether Foundation skiff cut through the water, leaving a churning white wake. The wind whipped at them, salty and sharp. Lily was at the bow, a datapad in her hands, her knuckles white. She was cross-referencing news reports, geological data, and Pokémon migration patterns for Akala Island. Lana stood near the stern, her eyes closed, one hand trailing in the water as if listening to the ocean's gossip. Ash stood at the center of the boat, his feet planted wide, Kukui at the helm. "Anything, Lily?" Ash asked, his voice carrying easily over the roar of the engine. "It makes no sense," she replied, not looking up from her screen. "There's no seismic activity, no volcanic precursor, nothing that would trigger a panic on this scale. The reports say the Pokémon are coming from Wella Volcano Park, but also from the deeper parts of lush jungle. They're not fleeing a single point of origin. It's like, they're being pushed from all sides toward a central point." "Paniola town," Ash finished grimly. Lana opened her eyes. "The water feels agitated. Frightened. The Pokémon in the sea along Akala's coast are trying to swim away. They feel the vibrations from the land." "Coordinated," Lily murmured, looking up at Ash. "This feels coordinated." The word hung in the air, cold and heavy. This wasn't a natural disaster. As they rounded the coastline of Akala, they saw it. A plume of dust and smoke rising above the green canopy of the jungle, a brown stain against the blue sky. The rumbling was a constant, visceral presence now, a bass note that you felt in your bones. Kukui brought the skiff into the docks at Heahea City with practiced skill. Olivia was waiting for them, her usual vibrant confidence replaced by a strained urgency. A team of Pokémon Rangers stood by with her. "Thank the Tapu you're here," she said, foregoing any pleasantries. It's worse than we thought. The stampede is massive, and it's unnaturally aggressive. My rangers are trying to form a defensive line, but they're being overwhelmed. They're not just running, they're attacking anything in their path. Where's Mallow? Ash asked immediately. She went straight to the restaurant to help her father, Olivia said, pointing inland. They're trying to get the last of the customers and staff to the shelter in Paniola town. The main herd is less than a mile from them. We need a vantage point, Lily said, her voice sharp with focus. We can't act until we see the whole picture. The ridge overlooking Paniola Ranch, Olivia supplied. It's the highest point between here and the jungle. You can see the whole valley. I'll take you. The ride in Olivia's jeep was a blur of swaying trees and panicked cries. The ground shook with a violence that made the vehicle shudder. When they reached the ridge, the sight that greeted them was one of pure chaos. Below, a river of brown and gray bodies churned through the jungle. Hundreds, maybe thousands of Pokémon, Tauros with their eyes glowing red, Rhyhorn goring trees in their blind panic, Donphan rolling like living boulders. They moved as one, a single organism of fear and rage, carving a wide path of destruction. In the distance, smoke rose from the direction of Paniola town. And nestled precariously at the edge of the herd's path was the familiar, welcoming shape of Mallow's family restaurant. Ash felt Mallow's terror spike through their bond, a jolt of pure adrenaline. She was there. She was in the path of that. He took a deep breath, pushing down his own fear. He was the center. He had to be calm. He closed his eyes for a second, drawing on the cool serenity he could feel radiating from Lana, on the fierce, analytical focus pouring from Lily. The mental chaos receded, replaced by a sharp, crystalline clarity. He opened his eyes. Okay. Here's the plan. Lily, Lana, and Olivia all turned to him. His voice was different. Deeper. It held an unshakable authority that none of them had ever heard before. Lily, you're our eyes and ears. From here, you can see everything. Coordinate us. You'll have a direct comms link to me, Lana, and Olivia's rangers. Tell us where the herd is thickest, where it's breaking through. You're the strategist. Lily nodded, her fear replaced by a look of intense concentration. She was already tapping at her data pad, linking into the Rangers' comms network. I can do that. Lana, he continued, turning to her. See that river to the west of Paniola Ranch? It's their only clear path if they get past the restaurant. I need you to make it impassable. Go there. Use your connection to the water. Ask the water-type Pokémon for help. Raise the banks, create a barrier they can't cross. Can you do it? Lana's gaze was fixed on the river, her expression one of profound focus. The river is strong. The Pokémon within are scared. But they will listen. It can be done. Go, he commanded. She nodded once and, with a grace that defied the chaos around them, sprinted down the other side of the ridge toward the water. Olivia, your rangers need to focus on evacuation and defense at the town itself. Form a line with your strongest rock and ground types at the edge of Paniola. Don't engage the main herd. Just hold the line. We'll divert them. Olivia looked at him, a flicker of surprise in her eyes at being given orders, but it was quickly replaced by a nod of respect. You heard him, she barked into her radio. Form up at the town's edge. Hold that line. Finally, he looked at Pikachu, who was vibrating with battle-ready energy on his shoulder. It's you and me, pal. And Mallow. We're going in. Ash, what are you going to do? Lily asked, her voice tight with worry. We can't stop it, he said, his eyes scanning the churning mass of Pokémon. But maybe we can steer it. Mallow knows this jungle better than anyone. We'll get ahead of the main group, use our Pokémon to create diversions, and force them to turn west. We'll drive them right into Lana's water barrier. He didn't wait for an answer. With Pikachu on his shoulder, he launched himself down the rocky face of the ridge, sliding down scree and leaping over bushes, heading directly toward the leading edge of the stampede. The jungle floor was a nightmare. The ground trembled so violently it was hard to stay upright. The air was thick with dust and the smell of terror. Ash and Pikachu moved like ghosts through the undergrowth, Lycanroc a blur of rock and speed at their side. Mallow! Ash yelled into the comms unit Lily had given him. Talk to me. Where are you? Her voice came back, strained and breathless. Ash. We got everyone out. My dad is leading them to the town shelter. I'm still here, with Serena. I couldn't just leave. Where is the herd in relation to you? Lily's calm, analytical voice cut in. Too close. Maybe 200 yards east. They're breaking through the tree line. Mallow, I need you to guide me, Ash said, his voice a steady anchor in the storm of her panic. I need a path to get in front of them. The oldest, thickest part of the jungle, where the trees are too big for them to knock down easily. I know a place. Mallow's voice was suddenly full of purpose. The fear was still there, a sharp tang in their bond, but it was now overlaid with her innate knowledge of her home. An old lava tube system. The entrance is near the waterfall. It runs parallel to the jungle path. We can use it to get ahead of them. On our way. Lycanroc, full speed. Ash commanded. He ran, his body moving with a preternatural grace he didn't know he possessed. He felt a surge of Mallow's familiarity with the terrain, a subconscious knowledge of where to place his feet, which vines were strong enough to swing on. He dodged a charging Rhyhorn that had broken from the main herd, a blur of motion. He found her near a curtain of cascading water, her green hair matted with sweat and dirt, her partner Pokémon Serena poised and ready at her side. The relief that flooded their bond when they saw each other was a palpable thing. This way, she yelled over the roar of the waterfall and the stampede, diving behind the water into a dark, narrow opening. The lava tube was dark and cool, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. The rumbling was muffled here, a deep, constant thunder. Lily, we're in the tube, Ash said into his comms. Are we ahead of them yet? Affirmative, Lily's voice replied, crisp and clear. The main body of the herd is approximately half a mile behind you. If you follow the tube north, you should exit just ahead of the lead toros. Lana is in position at the river. She's... Ash, you should see this. Tell me, he urged, running alongside Mallow. She's not just building a barrier, Lily's voice was filled with awe. She's working with a group of Gyarados and a school of Wishiwashi. They're channeling the river. The water level has risen 20 feet, and the currents are like a whirlpool. Nothing is getting across that. Ash felt a surge of pride for Lana, a deep thrum of her quiet, immense power through their connection. Good. Mallow, when we get out, we need to hit the east flank of the herd. Hard. We need to create a panic that turns them west, toward the river. Might Serena's Tro kick can send the toros flying, Mallow said, her confidence returning. And your Lycanroc is fast enough to harry their legs. Exactly. We won't win by fighting them. We'll win by outsmarting them. They burst out of the lava tube into the pandemonium once more. Lily had been right. They were directly in the path, with the lead phalanx of toros and Donphan bearing down on them like a tidal wave. Now! Ash yelled. What followed was a controlled, strategic chaos. It was a dance of incredible danger and precision. Mallow was a whirlwind of motion, her commands to Serena seamless with the Pokémon's elegant, powerful kicks. A Tro kick to the side of a lead toro sent it stumbling into its neighbor, creating a ripple of confusion. Ash was a blur, his bond with Pikachu and Lycanroc absolute. Lycanroc, stone edge. Not at them, in front of them. Create a wall. A line of sharp, glowing rocks erupted from the ground, forcing a part of the herd to swerve. Pikachu, Electroweb. Tangle their legs. A sticky, electrified net spread across the path, slowing the front runners and causing a pile-up. It was working. The head of the stampede, confused and panicked by this sudden, aggressive opposition from their flank, began to veer away from the pressure, turning west. But the herd was too big. For every section they turned, another pushed forward, relentless. Ash, it's not enough. Lily's voice crackled. There's a secondary group of Rhyhorn breaking off. They're going to bypass you and head straight for the restaurant. Ash saw them, a splinter group of living tanks, their horns lowered. He and Mallow were pinned down, dealing with the main body. They couldn't get there in time. I can't, Mallow started, her voice breaking with despair. It was then that Ash felt it. A cold, unnatural hum that was different from the panic of the Pokémon. A high-frequency whine that scraped at the edges of his hearing. It was coming from a cluster of rocks. Near the Rhyhorn. The sound. Ash yelled. Mallow, do you hear that? She paused, her head tilted. I do now. It's irritating. It wasn't just irritating. It was agitating. It was the source. Lily, I think I know what's causing this. There's a weird sound coming from the rocks near the Rhyhorn. It's driving them crazy. I see it. Lily exclaimed. On thermal, there's a heat signature in those rocks that isn't a Pokémon. It's electronic. Sabotage. Lily had been right. Mallow, keep turning the main herd. I'll handle the device. Ash yelled. He didn't have time for a plan. He just had to act. Pikachu, with me. He broke away from the flank, sprinting toward the cluster of rocks. The Rhyhorn, agitated by the proximity of the noise, were even more aggressive. One of them lowered its head and charged, its horn aimed straight for Ash's chest. There was no time to dodge. In a split second, a decision was made. He didn't brace for impact. He ran toward it. In a feat of acrobatics that seemed to defy gravity, he planted a foot on the Rhyhorn's lowered head, launched himself into the air, and used the momentum to flip over the creature's back, landing gracefully on the other side. He reached the rocks and saw it. A sleek, metallic device, humming with a malevolent energy, half buried in the dirt. It pulsed with a sickening, high-frequency sound. Pikachu. End this. 10 million volt thunderbolt. Ash threw his hat to Pikachu, their bond surging, the Z-power crystal on his wrist glowing with an intense light. He felt the shared energy of the circle flow into him, Lily's focus, Mallow's tenacity, Lana's depth, and poured it all into his partner. Pikachu leaped into the air, becoming a comet of pure electrical power. The multicolored bolts of the ultimate Z-move didn't just strike the device, they vaporized it, leaving nothing but a smoking crater and a sudden, ringing silence. For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. The maddening whine was gone. The Rhyhorn skidded to a halt, shaking their massive heads as if waking from a nightmare. The red glow in their eyes faded. The rest of the herd, their primary agitator gone, began to slow, the mindless rage giving way to confusion and exhaustion. The pressure lessened, and Mallow and Serena were able to turn the last of them toward the river, where the churning water wall created by Lana provided an impassable deterrent. The stampede was over. The great beast had been tamed. Slowly, the Pokémon began to disperse, melting back into the jungle, their panic subsiding. Ash stood panting, his heart hammering in his chest. He walked over to the crater where the device had been. At the edge of the blast zone, a small, twisted piece of metal casing lay in the dirt. He picked it up. Etched onto its surface was a simple, chilling symbol, a perfect circle, broken by a single, jagged line. Lily, he said into his comms, his voice low. I'm sending you a picture of something I found. A symbol. He used Rotom Dex to transmit the image. The silence on the other end was heavy. I've seen it before, Lily's voice was grim. In old ether files. It's the insignia of a radical group. They believe legendary Pokémon, and any human with a strong aura connection to them, are threats to the world. They call themselves the Order of Silence. The name sent a shiver down Ash's spine. This wasn't random. This was a message. An attack on him, on them. Later that evening, the air in Mallow's family restaurant was filled not with the smell of cooking, but with the scent of antiseptic and relief. The restaurant itself was miraculously untouched, a testament to their success. Mallow's father was bustling about, handing out blankets and hot tea to the shaken but safe townspeople and rangers. The circle sat at a quiet corner table. They were exhausted, bruised, and covered in grime, but they were together. Ash winced as he moved his left arm. In the chaos of his acrobatic dodge, he hadn't even noticed a low-hanging branch had sliced a deep gash along his forearm. "You're hurt," Lily said softly, her voice full of concern. She immediately got up and came back with a first aid kit. She knelt beside him, gently taking his arm. Her touch was hesitant at first, then firm and steady as she began cleaning the wound. Ash watched her, her brow furrowed in concentration, her blonde hair falling across her face. In the quiet intimacy of the moment, the roaring chaos of the day felt a million miles away. He could feel her worry through their bond, not as a panicked thing, but as a deep, steady current of care. "You were amazing today, Lily," he said quietly, making her look up. Her eyes were wide. "You were our commander. We couldn't have done it without you." A faint blush crept up her neck. "I just, read the data. You were the one who ran into the middle of it." From across the table, Mallow watched them, a small, knowing smile on her face. She looked at Ash, her expression full of a new kind of respect. "She's right, though," Mallow said, leaning forward. "You were different out there, Ash. Not just the crazy, never give up Ash we all know. You were a leader. You knew exactly what everyone's strengths were and how to use them. You trusted us." Lana, who had been silently sipping her tea, nodded. "The fire and the water," she said, her blue eyes meeting Ash's. "The mind and the heart. We were one." Ash looked at his arm, now neatly bandaged by Lily, who was still kneeling beside him, her hand lingering on his for a moment longer than necessary. He looked at Mallow's proud, grateful face, and at Lana's calm, affirming gaze. The bond between them hummed, no longer a new, strange sensation, but a comforting, powerful presence. They had faced their first trial, not just as friends, but as the Aaliyah Alakai. They had bent a force of nature to their will, saved a town, and uncovered the first hint of a chilling new enemy. The victory was sweet, but the discovery of the broken circle left a bitter taste. Their battle for Alola, Ash realized, had only just begun. Chapter 3, The Serpent in Paradise. The Ether Paradise was an island of sterile white and shimmering glass, a monument to human ingenuity rising from the warm Alolan sea. It was a place Lily once called home, then a prison, and now, something in between. Today, it felt like a negotiating table. A gilded cage where the serpent wore a tailored suit. Luzman had summoned them. Not requested, but summoned. The message had been polite, professional, but held the unyielding weight of her authority as the Foundation's president. The Akala incident, as the media was now calling it, had sent shockwaves far beyond Alola. A champion using his harem, a word that made Ash's teeth grind every time he saw it in a headline, to quell a disaster with supernatural efficiency was a story too sensational to ignore. It had drawn attention. Unwanted attention. They stood in Luzman's office, a vast, circular room with a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a panoramic view of the ocean. The room was all white and gold, clinical and opulent. Luzman sat behind a large, crystalline desk, the picture of serene control. But Ash, now keenly attuned to the emotional undercurrents around him, could feel the tightly coiled anxiety radiating from her. It was the same feeling he'd felt from Lily in the early days of their journey, the fear of losing control. Standing beside her was a man Ash disliked on sight. He was tall, with silver-streaked hair swept back from a handsome, unlined face. He wore an impeccably tailored gray suit that probably cost more than everything Ash owned combined. His smile was a bright, predatory thing, all teeth and no warmth. "Ash Ketchum," the man said, extending a hand. His voice was smooth, cultured, with an accent Ash couldn't quite place. "An honor. Chairman Alastair Prescott, of the International Pokémon League Federation's Oversight Committee. We've been following your career with great interest." Ash shook the man's hand. His grip was firm, dry, and dismissive. Prescott's eyes swept over him, then over Mallow and Lana, who stood slightly behind Ash, their expressions wary. It was the look of a man appraising livestock. "And these must be the other members of your circle," Prescott said, the slight pause before the word circle turning it into an insult. "Mallow, the culinary prodigy, and Lana, the water expert. Your files are quite fascinating." Mallow's arms crossed over her chest, a gesture of defiance. Lana's gaze remained placid, but Ash could feel a ripple of cold displeasure from her through their bond. "The Federation is, of course, thrilled with the success of the Alola League," Prescott continued, his smile never faltering. "However, this Aaliyah Alakai presents a complication. It's an unprecedented deviation from established league protocol. A champion's power is meant to be personal, a reflection of their skill as a trainer. This aura bond, this shared power, it's a variable we cannot quantify. It's untidy. It saved Paniola Town," Ash stated, his voice flat. He refused to be intimidated by this man's condescending charm. "A commendable outcome, to be sure," Prescott conceded with a wave of his hand. "But the methods were unorthodox. Dangerous. The Federation has a responsibility to maintain a global standard. We can't have regional champions forming mystical power-sharing pacts. It sets a chaotic precedent." Luzman finally spoke, her voice like ice. "Chairman Prescott is here to help us manage the political fallout, Ash. To ensure Alola's new league remains in good standing with the global community." "Manage?" Mallow scoffed, unable to stay silent. "It sounds more like you want to disband us." Prescott turned his smile on her. It was a weapon. "Not at all, my dear. We want to elevate Ash. He has the potential to be a global icon. A true champion, on par with Lance or Cynthia. But to do that, he needs to operate within the established framework. Sponsorships, global exhibition matches, media training, we can offer him the world." He turned his gaze back to Ash, his eyes gleaming. "All we ask is that you formally dissolve this circle. Publicly renounce this archaic tradition. Let the girls return to their domestic lives. And embrace your future as a proper league champion." The offer hung in the air, seductive and venomous. It was a lifeline and a leash. Power, fame, wealth, the things most people dreamed of. All for the small price of his integrity. "No," Ash said. The word was quiet, but it resonated with absolute finality. Prescott's smile tightened at the edges. "No. My answer is no," Ash repeated, his gaze unwavering. "Lily, Mallow, and Lana are not a complication. They're my partners. Their strength is my strength. This bond is not a tradition we're upholding. It's a promise we made to each other. A promise to protect Alola. If your Federation has a problem with that, then it's your problem, not mine." Through their bond, he felt a surge of warmth and pride from Mallow and Lana. He felt Lily's anxiety lessen, replaced by a fierce, soaring admiration. She stood a little taller. Prescott's veneer of civility began to crack. "A noble, if naive, sentiment. But you're not just a boy from Pallet Town anymore, Mr. Ketchum. You're a public figure. A symbol. And your actions have consequences. He turned his attention to Luzamin. President Luzamin, surely you can see the issue. Your own daughter, bound by this primitive ritual. It undermines the Ether Foundation's image as a forward-thinking, scientific institution. How can you expect the global community to trust your research on ultra-space when your own family is dabbling in tribal mysticism? He was trying to divide them, to turn Luzamin's own ambition and pride against her daughter. Ash saw Lily flinch, saw the familiar shadow of fear cross her face as her mother's expression hardened. My daughter's choices are her own, Luzamin said, her voice dangerously low. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Ash could feel it. The conflict in her was a churning storm. Are they? Prescott pressed, his voice like silk. Or is she under the influence of a powerful aura user and an antiquated custom she doesn't fully understand? I'm simply suggesting that for her own safety, for the sake of your foundation, she be shielded from this. Before Lily or Ash could respond, the office doors slid open. Gladion strode in, his expression thunderous. Silvally paced at his heels, its composite body radiating a low hum of aggression. I've heard enough, Gladion snarled, his eyes fixed on Prescott. You're not welcome here. Get out. Prescott raised an eyebrow, unfazed. Ah, the prodigal son. I was wondering when you'd make an appearance. Your concern for your sister is touching, if misplaced. My concern is for anyone who trusts a snake in a suit, Gladion shot back. He then turned his fiery gaze on Ash. And you. I warned you. I told you this would bring trouble. Look at this man. He's trying to use Lily, to use all of you, as pawns in some political game. And we told him no, Ash said calmly. Telling him no isn't enough. Gladion stepped forward, his fists clenched. Do you have any idea what kind of power men like him wield? They can bury you in sanctions, discredit you in the media, turn the whole world against Alola. You have to be strong enough to fight back, not just with words, but with power. You have to prove that this circle isn't a weakness they can exploit. You have to prove you're strong enough to protect her. His voice was raw, desperate. This wasn't just about politics for Gladion. It was about Lily. It was a test. He needed to know, with absolute certainty, that the boy his sister had bound herself to was worthy of that trust. That he was strong enough to face the storm that was coming. Then let's prove it, Ash said, his eyes meeting Gladion's. You and me. A battle. Right now. The challenge hung in the air. Gladion's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise, which was quickly replaced by a grim acceptance. This was a language he understood. Fine, Gladion grunted. Ether Paradise has a private battlefield on the lower deck. Let's see if your new power is anything more than a fairy tale. He turned and strode out of the room. Prescott watched him go, a flicker of amusement on his face. This was playing right into his hands. A public display of infighting. Proof of the instability he'd been talking about. An excellent idea, Prescott said smoothly. A demonstration. Let's all go and watch the champion prove his strength. The battlefield on the lower deck was a pristine circle of green turf surrounded by a high-tech energy barrier, open to the sky. The sea air was cool and salty. Ash stood on one side, Pikachu on his shoulder, his other Pokémon represented by the Pokeballs on his belt. Gladion stood opposite, Silvally at his side, its intimidating form a stark contrast to the bright, clean surroundings. Luzamin, Prescott, Lily, Mallow, and Lana watched from a raised observation platform. The atmosphere was thick with tension. This is foolish, Luzamin murmured, her arms crossed tightly. On the contrary, Prescott said, his eyes gleaming. This is informative. Lily watched, her hands clasped together so tightly her knuckles were white. She could feel the storm of emotions coming from the platform, her mother's frustrated anxiety, Prescott's smug satisfaction, Mallow's worried anger, Lana's deep, focused calm. But they were all muted, distant, compared to the two presences on the field below. Gladian's was a blade of honed steel, all sharp edges and focused intent. Ash's was a bonfire, burning hot and bright, but steady. And woven into it were the threads of their bond, a quiet strength bolstering him. This will be a full 6-on-6 battle. Gladion declared, his voice ringing across the field. No holding back, Ash. Show me what you've got. You got it, Gladion. Ash called back, a grin touching his lips for the first time that day. This, he understood. This was where he was most comfortable. Not in an office full of words like daggers, but here, on a battlefield, with his partners. Lycanroc, I choose you. Ash yelled, throwing the pokeball. His dusk form Lycanroc emerged with a ferocious howl, its paws digging into the turf. A predictable choice, Gladion sneered. Go, Zoroark. Gladian's Zoroark materialized, its crimson mane flowing. But as it landed, it shimmered and transformed, its shape melting and reforming into that of a massive, bulky Machamp. An illusion? Mallow gasped from the stands. Gladian's Zoroark is a master of it, Lily explained, her voice tight. It can perfectly mimic another Pokémon's appearance and even its initial moves. Ash just smiled. Lycanroc, Accelerock. Lycanroc shot forward, a blur of orange fur, moving with incredible speed. The false Machamp braced itself, preparing for a powerful physical strike. But at the last second, Ash called out, now, Stone Edge. Lycanroc didn't slam into the illusion. Instead, it skidded to a halt and stomped its foot. A circle of razor-sharp stones erupted from the ground, surrounding the false Machamp and boxing it in. What? Gladion grunted, surprised by the tactic. An illusion is only as good as the reaction it gets, Ash said, his eyes sharp. I wasn't aiming for you, I was aiming for where you'd be. Now, Lycanroc, use Sword's Dance. While the Zoroark was trapped, Lycanroc's body glowed, its attack power skyrocketing. The illusion flickered and died, the real Zoroark snarling as it tried to claw its way through the stone pillars. Break through with Night Days. Gladion commanded. A wave of dark energy exploded from Zoroark, shattering the stone prison. But it was too late. Accelerock. Ash yelled. Boosted by Sword's Dance, Lycanroc moved like a meteor. It struck Zoroark dead center, the impact sending the dark type flying across the field, knocked out in a single, devastating blow. A stunned silence fell over the observation deck. Prescott's smug smile faltered. Ash hadn't just won the first round, he had dismantled Gladion's opening strategy with casual, predictive brilliance. He hadn't just outpowered his opponent, he had outthought him. Gladion recalled Zoroark, his jaw tight. Impressive. But that was just a warm-up. Go, Weevil. The battle that followed was a masterclass. It was a brutal, beautiful symphony of power and strategy. Gladion was relentless, his Pokémon powerful and perfectly trained. He brought out his Weevil, whose ice shard attacks forced Ash to recall Lycanroc and bring out his Incineroar. The clash of fire and ice was explosive, a maelstrom of darkest lariat and icicle crash that ended in a hard-fought double knockout. Next was Gladion's Porygon Z against Ash's Melmetal. The digital Pokémon's erratic movements and powerful tri-attacks were a nightmare, but Ash used Melmetal's immense weight and liquid metal body in ways Gladion couldn't predict. He had Melmetal melt and reform around a Hyper Beam, absorbing the impact, before delivering a thunderous double iron bash that shook the entire platform. Each move Ash made was decisive, intuitive. He felt the flow of the battle, not just with his mind, but with the enhanced senses the circle provided. He could feel Gladion's frustration, the slight hesitation before each command, and he exploited it mercilessly. He felt the unwavering support from the observation deck, Lily's focused hope, Mallow's fierce belief, Lana's calm confidence, and it fueled him, sharpened his senses. Finally, it came down to the last Pokémon on each side. Ash's Pikachu, panting but resolute, and Gladion's ace, Silvally. "This is it, Ash!" Gladion yelled, his face grim. "Type, Null was created to fight threats beyond our understanding. It was made for this. Let's see how your bond holds up against pure, engineered power. Fire memory, activate." He tossed a red memory disk to Silvally. The device slotted into its head, and its crest, claws, and tail erupted in a brilliant crimson flame. "Pikachu, you ready for this, pal?" Ash asked. "Pika." Pikachu sparked, its cheeks blazing. "Multi-attack." Gladion roared. Wreathed in flames, Silvally charged, moving with a speed that defied its size. "Pikachu, Iron Tail on the ground." Ash commanded. Pikachu's tail hardened to a metallic sheen and slammed into the turf. The impact kicked up a massive cloud of dirt and grass, completely obscuring Silvally's vision. The fiery beast charged right through it, but its target was gone. "Above you!" Ash yelled. Pikachu had used the cloud as cover to leap high into the air. Now, Thunderbolt. A massive bolt of electricity crashed down onto Silvally's back. It roared in pain but shook it off, its fiery energy crackling. "It's not enough!" Gladion shouted. "Its Arceus system adapts. It's too strong. Crush Claw." Silvally leaped, its claws glowing with fiery energy, aiming to bring Pikachu down. "We're not trying to beat it with one move," Ash said, his voice ringing with confidence. "We're going to beat it with all of them. Pikachu, quick attack, dodge and weave." What followed was an unbelievable display of speed and agility. Pikachu became a yellow blur, using Silvally's own large frame as a springboard. It ran up its back, dodged under its legs, always staying one step ahead of the fiery claws and blasts of flame. With every dodge, it landed a tiny, precise strike, a quick attack here, a weak thunderbolt there. They weren't powerful blows, but they were constant, relentless, and disorienting. "He's not just fighting," Lily breathed from the railing, her eyes wide with realization. "He's learning. He's analyzing its attack patterns in real time. Stop moving and fight." Gladion roared, his frustration mounting. "We are fighting." Ash yelled back. "We're just doing it our way. Pikachu, now." Pikachu, having led Silvally into a lunging attack that left it momentarily off balance, landed directly in front of it. Electroweb. A huge, sticky net of electricity slammed into Silvally's face, blinding it and sending jolts of power through its system. It roared, thrashing wildly. "This is for Akala," Ash said, his voice low and intense. "For Paniola. For putting my friends in danger. Pikachu. Let's go." 10 million volt Thunderbolt. Ash performed the Z-move motions, his bond with Pikachu, amplified by the circle, exploding into a supernova of power. Pikachu became a singularity of raw, untamed electricity. The rainbow-colored bolts of lightning didn't just strike Silvally, they engulfed it, lifting the massive creature off the ground in a blinding sphere of energy. The explosion rocked the entire island. The energy barrier flickered and died. When the light faded, Silvally lay in a heap, its fire memory clattering to the turf, unconscious. Pikachu landed softly in front of Ash, panting heavily, but victorious. Silence. Gladion stared, his face a mask of disbelief. He had been beaten. Not just beaten, outclassed, outmaneuvered, and utterly overpowered. He slowly walked forward and recalled his partner, patting the pokeball with a quiet reverence. He looked up at Ash, his eyes holding a new, profound respect. "How?" "It's not just me," Ash said, walking forward to meet him, Pikachu climbing back onto his shoulder. "It's us." He glanced up at the observation deck, at Lily, Mallow, and Lana. "Their strength, their trust, it makes me stronger. It makes me smarter. It makes me a better partner for my Pokémon. Gladion followed his gaze, and for the first time, he seemed to truly understand. This wasn't a chain. It was an amplifier. Meanwhile, on the platform, Prescott was staring at the field, his handsome face pale, his composure shattered. The raw power he had just witnessed, it was beyond anything the Federation could quantify. It was a primal force given form. It was a threat. A threat far greater than he had anticipated. This changes nothing, he stammered, trying to regain his footing. This display of brute force only proves my point. It's too volatile, too dangerous to be left unchecked, Mr. Prescott, Luzman interrupted, her voice as cold and sharp as a shard of ice. She had watched the entire battle, had seen the look in her daughter's eyes, the unshakable bond between Ash and his friends, the sheer, undeniable power born of that bond. She had seen her son, the fiercest trainer she knew, defeated by a power he couldn't comprehend. The doubt that Prescott had planted in her had been burned away by the Z-Move's light. I believe your business here is concluded. Prescott turned to her, sputtering. But President Luzman, the Ether Foundation stands with Alola, she declared, her voice ringing with renewed, absolute authority. And Alola stands with its champion. And his circle. If your federation has an issue with that, you may take it up with our legal department. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to check on my son. She turned and strode from the platform without a backward glance. Mallow and Lana followed, but not before giving Prescott looks of pure, unadulterated triumph. Lily was the last to leave. She paused, looking down at the field where Ash and Gladion were now shaking hands, their rivalry forged into a new, solid respect. She then turned her gaze to Prescott. Her fear of men like him was gone, replaced by a cool, unyielding strength. You were wrong about us, she said, her voice clear and steady. This bond doesn't make us weaker. It's the source of our strength. And we're only just beginning to understand it. As she walked away, Lily checked the datapad she was carrying. While the battle had raged, she hadn't just been watching. She'd been working. Using the Ether Foundation's immense data mining resources, she had been digging into Chairman Prescott. And she'd found it. A web of shell corporations, offshore accounts, and discreet funding, all leading back to one name, the Order of Silence. Prescott wasn't just a sympathizer or a lobbyist. He was one of them. A high-ranking operative. She hurried to catch up with the others, her heart hammering. The serpent had been driven out of paradise, but now she knew its name. And she knew it was part of a much, much larger nest. Chapter 4, The Fury of the Feni. The peace was a fragile thing. In the days following the confrontation at Ether Paradise, a tense quiet had fallen over Alola. Prescott had vanished, recalled by the Federation under a cloud of official-sounding excuses that Lily knew were lies. But the shadow of the Order of Silence lingered. Lily's discovery had confirmed their fears, this wasn't just a fringe group. They had infiltrated the highest levels of power. They were organized, patient, and their attack on Akala had been just a probe, a test. The real assault was still to come. The Circle used the time to train, not just their Pokémon, but themselves. They met daily on the secluded beach by Kukui's lab, pushing the limits of their new bond. Ash found he could draw on Mallow's stamina to battle for hours without tiring. Mallow discovered that tapping into Ash's fiery determination allowed her Tsurena to strike with ferocious, explosive power. Lily, channeling the group's collective focus, could perceive the flow of a battle with a strategist's clarity, calling out weaknesses and openings Ash himself would have missed. But it was Lana who was changing the most. Her connection to the water had always been profound, now, it was becoming something more. With Ash and the others anchoring her, she could reach further, feel deeper. She could feel the health of the coral reefs miles away, sense the emotional state of a pod of whale mare on the other side of the island. The ocean was no longer just her home, it was an extension of her own senses. The deep, cool current of her presence in the bond became a vast, powerful tide. The call came from Hapu. Her voice over the comms was strained, the wind whipping in the background, carrying the sound of crashing waves. "It's Pony Island. Something's wrong with the water." They were on the next ferry, the sky above a strange, bruised purple, though there were no clouds. As they approached Pony's shores, the change was immediately apparent. The normally vibrant turquoise water was a sickly, murky gray. A foul, chemical scent, like rust and decay, hung in the air. Pokémon lay gasping on the beaches, Magikarp, Fin Neon, even sturdy Tentacruel, their bodies covered in a strange, brownish slime. The Seafolk village was in a panic. Their boats were being corroded by the blighted water, and the fishing nets came up empty, or worse, full of sick and dying Pokémon. Hapu met them at the docks, her face a mask of grim fury. Mudsdale stood beside her, stomping the ground with nervous energy. "It happened overnight," she said, her voice tight. "The water just died. And Tapu Fini is enraged." As if on cue, a deafening roar echoed from the direction of the vast Pony Canyon. The ocean swelled, and a colossal whirlpool, miles wide, began to form around the island. Its vortex centered on the ruins of Hope, Tapu Fini's sacred ground. The sea, once a source of life, had become a churning, impassable barrier. Ships on the horizon were being dragged toward it, their alarms blaring in terror. "It's trapping us," Hapu gritted out. "It thinks we are to blame. It can't tell the source of the poison, only that its domain is corrupted." Ash felt the Guardians rage through the very air, a wave of ancient, indiscriminate fury. But beneath it, through his bond with Lana, he felt something else. A deep, piercing agony. The Tapu wasn't just angry. It was in pain. "Lana," he said, turning to her. She was already at the water's edge, her hands submerged in the foul, gray sea. Her eyes were closed. Her face pale. The serene calm that was her signature in their bond was now a maelstrom of shared agony. Tears streamed down her face, though she made no sound. "It's not just the water," she whispered, her voice trembling. "It's the life force. Something is actively drinking it. Siphoning it away. It's concentrated. Strongest near the ruins of Hope. Near the moon pool." "The moon pool," Hapu breathed, her eyes widening in horror. "That is the heart of Tapu Fini's power. If it's corrupted." "The Order of Silence," Lily said, her voice grim. She was analyzing a sample of the water with a portable ether kit. "There's an alchemical agent in here. A complex compound designed to react with spiritual energy, with aura, and neutralize it. It's not just a poison. It's a soul killer." This was their attack. Not a frontal assault, but a strike at the very heart of Alola's spiritual power. To poison a guardian deity, to turn it against its own people, it was an act of unimaginable cruelty. "We have to stop it," Mallow declared, her hands clenched into fists. "We have to get to the moon pool." "How?" Hapu demanded, gesturing to the monstrous whirlpool. "No boat can get through that. Tapu Fini will destroy anything that approaches." All eyes turned to Lana. She was still kneeling by the water, her body trembling with the effort of enduring the ocean's pain. She took a deep, shuddering breath and looked up, her blue eyes blazing with a fire none of them had ever seen in her before. "I can," she said, her voice quiet but ringing with absolute certainty. "I can calm it. But I can't do it from here. I have to go to it. Into the heart of the storm." The idea was insane. To willingly enter that churning vortex of divine rage. "Lana, no." Mallow cried out. "It will tear you apart." "It won't," Lana replied, her gaze shifting to Ash. A silent conversation passed between them through the bond. He felt her certainty, her deep, instinctual knowledge that this was her fight, her purpose. He felt her fear, but also her resolve, a strength as deep and unyielding as the ocean floor. And he felt her trust in him. Ash knelt beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. The storm in her quieted slightly at his touch. "We're with you, Lana," he said, his voice a steady anchor. "Tell us what you need." Her plan was simple, audacious, and terrifying. She would be the one to appease Tapu Fini, to speak to its heart and convince it of their intent. But she couldn't do it alone. The poison was an active agent, and the order would have guarded it. "I will go into the water," Lana said, standing up. "Ash, I need you with me. Your fire. It will shield me from the worst of the cold, the pressure. Your aura will help me project my own." She looked at her pokeball. "Primarina will guide us. The rest of us won't just stand here," Mallow insisted. "No," Lily agreed, her mind already working, a field commander taking charge. "The Order's agents will be guarding the location. The poison has to be deployed from somewhere on the island, near the ruins. Mallow, Hapu, you're the ground team. Sweep the coastline, from the village to the entrance of the ruins. The Order uses Pokemon bred for specific tasks. Look for unusual types, something that doesn't belong here. Poison, steel, dark. They'll be there, protecting their device." "We'll find them," Hapu growled, swinging herself onto Mudsdale's back. "And I'll coordinate," Lily finished, setting up a communication hub on the dock. "I'll use the Ether Foundation's satellite network to scan for energy signatures. The device must have a power source. I can pinpoint it for you." The circle had its mission. It was a race against time. The longer the poison remained, the weaker Tapu Fini would become, and the more its rage would consume it. Ash and Lana stood at the edge of the maelstrom. The roar was deafening. The sheer power of the water was a physical blow. Lana took a deep breath and sent out Primarina. The magnificent Pokemon let out a clear, beautiful note, a single point of purity in the cacophony. "Ready?" Ash asked, his hand finding hers. Lana squeezed his hand, her gaze fixed on the swirling abyss. "Ready." "Pikachu, stay with Lily," Ash commanded. "This is a job for the water team. Greninja, I choose you." The Pokeball in his hand was one he hadn't used in a long time, a relic from a past journey. The ninja Pokemon materialized, its eyes immediately locking with Ash's, a silent understanding passing between them. A master of stealth and water, it was the perfect partner for this mission. "Let's go," Lana whispered. Holding hands, they dove into the churning, gray sea. The world beneath the surface was a vortex of blinding speed and crushing pressure. Debris, splintered wood, kelp, rocks, spun around them in the violent current. The water was cold, colder than it should be, and it felt thick, syrupy, dead. Ash immediately channeled his aura, a warm, golden light enveloping him and Lana, pushing back the unnatural chill and creating a small pocket of breathable air for him, a technique he'd only just mastered. Primarina led the way, its powerful voice a sonar beam, navigating the treacherous currents. Greninja moved like a shadow at their side, its webbed hands and feet allowing it to maneuver with impossible agility, deflecting debris with well-aimed water shurikens. Through the bond, Ash felt Lana's focus. She wasn't fighting the whirlpool, she was becoming part of it. She felt its rhythm, its fury, and slowly, gently, began to sing to it. Not with her voice, but with her heart, her aura, projected outwards, amplified by Ash's own. It was a song of sorrow, of empathy, of shared pain. A plea for understanding. "We are here to help. We feel your pain. The land dwellers are not your enemy. We are your children." The raging current lessened slightly. The vortex, while still deadly, seemed to loosen its grip, allowing them passage. They were being permitted to approach the center. On the surface, Mallow and Hapu were a force of nature. They swept along the rocky coastline like a storm, Serena's powerful legs a green blur, Mudsdale's hooves shaking the very cliffs. Lily. Anything? Mallow yelled into her comms, leaping over a jagged ravine. I have it. Lily's voice crackled back. A concentrated energy signature, shielded, but it's there. In a sea cave at the base of the western cliff of the Ruins of Hope. It's accessible only from the shore. That has to be it. We see the cave. Hapu roared. And it's guarded. Two figures in the now familiar black tactical gear of the Order of Silence stood at the cave's mouth. Between them hovered a Pokémon that made Mallow's blood run cold. It was a massive, metallic scorpion, its claws dripping with a viscous purple ooze, its tail held high. A Drapion, but it was wrong. Its shell was augmented with plates of dark, non-reflective metal, and a network of glowing purple tubes pulsed beneath its carapace. A cybernetically enhanced Pokémon, bred for one purpose, to be a perfect killing machine. Don't let them near the cave, one of the agents yelled, his voice distorted by a helmet. The purifier is almost at full saturation. Hapu, you take the agents. Mallow commanded, her knuckles white. That thing is mine. Serena, let's dance. The battle on the shore was brutal and direct. Hapu and Mudstale were an earthquake, their high horsepower attack sending the agents scrambling, their own Pokémon, a Salazzle and a Toxicroak, hard-pressed to deal with the sheer force of the Kahuna's assault. Mallow and Serena faced the monstrous Drapion. The creature was unnaturally fast, its cross-poison attack a blur of deadly strikes. Serena dodged and weaved, its movements elegant and precise. It's too defensive. Mallow grunted, as a Tro kick bounced harmlessly off the Drapion's augmented shell. Its armor is too thick. Mallow, its weak point is the underbelly. Lily's voice directed from the comms. The plating is thinner there. And aim for the tubes. If they're carrying the poison, they must be volatile. Got it. Serena, use the terrain. Get under it. Serena stomped the ground, then used the resulting fissure to slide beneath the massive scorpion, lashing out with a flurry of kicks aimed at the glowing purple tubes. One of them ruptured, spraying the foul-smelling alchemical agent onto the rocks, which sizzled and dissolved. The Drapion shrieked, a sound of both pain and mechanical failure, and turned its full fury on Serena. Deeper, deeper Ash and Lana went, into the eye of the storm. Here, the water was unnaturally still, the eye of the hurricane. And at the center of it, floating above the glowing patterns of the moon pool, was Tapu Fini. The guardian deity was a horrifying sight. Its normally elegant shell was coated in the brown slime, its movements sluggish. The mystical fog that usually surrounded it was gone, replaced by a dark, oily aura of pain and rage. Its eyes were closed, lost in a nightmare of its own making. And below it, at the very bottom of the moon pool, was the source. It was a device, a grotesque metal sphere bristling with siphons that had burrowed into the sacred floor of the pool. It pulsed with a sickly purple light, drinking the life force of the holy site and pumping its poison into the water. Guarding it was a second cyber-enhanced Drapion, even larger and more menacing than the one on the surface. The moment it sensed them, it attacked, firing a sludge bomb that turned the water into a toxic minefield. Greninja, protect Lana. Ash commanded, his voice muffled by the water and his aura shield. Greninja became a whirlwind of water and steel, its water shurikens intercepting the toxic projectiles. It engaged the Drapion, a deadly underwater ballet of speed against brute force. Lana, now. Ash urged, his full attention on her. Lana nodded, her eyes closed. She and Primarina floated before the suffering Tapu Fini. Ash placed his hands on her shoulders, pouring his own aura, his own strength, into her. The golden thread of their bond blazed to life, a sun in the deep abyss. Lana reached out, not with her hands, but with her spirit. She didn't try to suppress the Tapu's rage. She embraced it. She showed the guardian the source of its pain, the device below. She shared the resolve of Mallow and Hapu fighting on the shore. She shared Lily's desperate search for a solution. And she shared Ash's unwavering, burning belief that they could make it right. We are your children. We have not forsaken you. Let us carry your pain. Let us be your champions. Primarina began to sing. Its oceanic operetta, usually a weapon of destructive beauty, was transformed. It was a lament, a lullaby, a hymn of healing. The beautiful notes, carried by Lana's own amplified aura, washed over Tapu Fini, cleansing the oily darkness, soothing the ancient, wounded spirit. Slowly, the guardian's movements softened. The dark aura receded. One of its eyes opened, and it focused on Lana, and on Ash behind her. It saw not attackers, but saviors. Below, the battle raged. Greninja was powerful, but the Drapion was a tank, its augmented armor shrugging off even the most powerful hydro pumps. Ash Greninja, Ash breathed, the old words coming to him like a prayer. He closed his eyes, his bond with Greninja flaring to life, a connection forged in the fires of the Kalos League. A vortex of water erupted around the Pokémon, and it transformed. The massive water shuriken formed on its back, its features becoming sharper, mirroring Ash's own. The power spike was immense. The transformed Greninja moved with impossible speed, a blur of blue and black. It didn't attack the Drapion's armor. It shot past it, its blade-like water shuriken slicing through the siphons connecting the poisoning device to the seafloor. With its source of power severed, the machine sputtered. The Drapion roared in fury and turned to attack Greninja, but it was too late. Tapu Fini was awake. Its eyes blazing with righteous fury, the guardian deity unleashed its power. It didn't create a whirlpool. It commanded the very essence of water. A single, focused jet of pure, energized water, a hydro pump of divine proportions, slammed into the Drapion, blasting it apart. Then, a second blast struck the poisoning device, shattering it into a million pieces. With its domain cleansed of the primary threat, Tapu Fini unleashed a wave of purifying mist. The water cleared, the gray sludge dissolving, the sickened Pokémon on the shores stirring back to life. The great whirlpool subsided, the ocean calming as if a fever had broken. On the shore, the remaining Drapion, its handler's device now destroyed, suddenly convulsed and collapsed, its augmentations failing. Mallow and Hapu, bruised but triumphant, watched as the Order agents, their mission a failure, were consumed by Tapu Fini's mist and vanished, teleported to some unknown, remote corner of the world. Underwater, an exhausted Lana sagged, the effort of the communion having taken everything from her. Ash caught her, holding her close. The Ash Greninja transformation faded, leaving both trainer and Pokémon panting from the exertion. Tapu Fini floated before them, its power calm and restored. It looked at Lana, then at Ash, then at the golden thread of aura that still connected them. It raised a hand, and a single, shimmering drop of purified water floated from its palm and touched Lana's forehead. A blessing. A thank you. When they surfaced, the sky was clear. The water was a brilliant turquoise once more. Mallow, Lily, and Hapu were waiting on the now peaceful shore, their faces etched with relief. Lana was exhausted, barely able to stand. She leaned heavily against Ash, her head resting on his shoulder. He supported her without a second thought, his arm wrapped securely around her waist. She looked up at him, her deep blue eyes full of a profound emotion that went beyond gratitude. It was admiration, trust, and a deep, quiet affection that had been forged in the crucible of the abyss. He had been her shield, her anchor, her fire in the deep. He looked down at her and smiled, a silent promise passing between them. He would always be there to keep her from being swept away by the tide. They had faced the fury of a god and won. But the victory was a somber one. The Order of Silence had proven they were willing to poison the very soul of Alola to achieve their goals. This war was only going to get bloodier. Chapter 5, The Masquerade of Silence. The Festival of the Alean Star was meant to be a symbol of a new beginning. Held in the sprawling central plaza of Hawali City, it was Alola's grand, defiant answer to the shadows that had begun to creep at its edges. The Akala incident and the pony crisis had been spun by Lily's deft public relations work, and a little help from Luzamen's formidable media machine, not as acts of terror, but as trials that had proven the strength of their new champion and his circle. The narrative was one of unity, of Alola's ancient traditions rising to meet modern threats. The festival was the celebration of that narrative. The air was alive with music from a dozen different bands, the scent of malasadas and fresh lepa berry juice, and the laughter of thousands of people. Banners depicting the four tapu fluttered alongside new ones bearing the symbol of the Alia Alakai, 4 stars, green, blue, and pale gold, orbiting a larger, fiery sun. For a few precious hours, Ash and the girls were not guardians or warriors. They were just young people at a festival. Mallow, in her element, was dragging them from one food stall to the next, critiquing the spice blend in a big malasada with the seriousness of a master chef. Too much nutmeg, not enough ginger, she declared, handing a piece to Ash. And they toasted the coconut shreds instead of leaving them raw. Rookie mistake. Ash, who thought it tasted amazing, just grinned and scarfed it down. Tastes good to me. Lana, a playful smile on her face, won a plush poplio at a ring toss game, her aim unnaturally, almost suspiciously, perfect. She handed the prize to a small, crying child who had just lost her own balloon, her quiet act of kindness going mostly unnoticed, except by Ash. He saw it, and the cool, calm note of her presence in their bond felt warmer for a moment. Lily, for her part, was trying her best to relax. She wore a simple, elegant sundress, her hair free of its usual braids, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't have a data pad in her hands. She even let Ash convince her to join him in a traditional Alolan dance, her movements awkward at first, then more confident as he guided her, his hand warm and steady in hers. The bond between them hummed with a soft, bright energy, a simple, shared joy that had nothing to do with battles or strategy. "See," he said, spinning her under his arm as the music swelled. "You're a natural." She laughed, a genuine, carefree sound that made his heart skip a beat. "I think you're just a good teacher." For a moment, under the festive lights, surrounded by friends and joyful crowds, it was easy to forget the broken circle, the alchemical poison, the cold, calculating enemy that watched them from the shadows. It was easy to believe in the peace they had fought for. That was their mistake. The first sign was a flicker. The vibrant lights of the plaza flickered once, twice, then went out, plunging the square into a sudden, disorienting twilight, lit only by the moon and the distant glow of the city. The music ground to a halt. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Then came the voice. It was not a shout, but a clear, amplified, and chillingly calm voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "People of Alola. Forgive this interruption of your celebration. My name is Kalen. And I am here to offer you liberation." On the massive video screens that had been showing festive images moments before, a new symbol appeared, the broken circle of the Order of Silence. The crowd gasped, a wave of fear washing through the plaza. Ash and the girls were instantly on alert. The brief, happy interlude was shattered. They moved together, forming a protective circle, their eyes scanning the rooftops. "Lily, can you trace the broadcast?" Ash asked, his voice low and urgent. "Trying," she whispered, pulling a small, powerful tablet from her purse. The relaxed young woman was gone, replaced by the cool-headed commander. "It's being routed through the city's public address system, but the source signal is encrypted, bouncing off a dozen proxies." On the rooftops surrounding the plaza, figures rose into view. They were clad in the same black tactical gear as the agents on Pony, but these were different. They moved with a chilling, synchronized grace, their forms lean and predatory. Each was armed with advanced, non-lethal capture weaponry. They were an elite unit. The voice, Kalen's voice, continued, smooth and persuasive. "You celebrate a return to the old ways. You cheer for a child king bound by superstition to a pantheon of fickle, dangerous gods. You call it unity. We call it enslavement. Images flashed across the screens. Archival footage of rampaging Pokémon. A grainy clip of a Gyarados destroying a fishing boat. A shot of Groudon and Kyogre locked in cataclysmic battle, devastating a city Ash vaguely recognized from news reports years ago. Then, a picture of Tapu Fini's whirlpool, twisting and menacing. These are your gods, Kalen's voice narrated. Beings of immense, untamed power who treat your lives as sport. They are not guardians. They are tyrants. And your new champion, your Alakai Nui, is not their master. He is their high priest. The focal point of a dangerous regression that threatens not just Alola, but the entire world. Panic began to set in. People were starting to shove, to scream, to run. Mallow, Lana, crowd control. Ash commanded, his voice cutting through the rising noise. Get the civilians out of the plaza. Move them toward the southern exits, away from the rooftops. Use your Pokémon to form barriers, guide them. On it. Mallow yelled. She and Lana didn't hesitate. Serena and Primarina were out in a flash, their powerful forms acting as living barricades, their presence a calming influence on the panicked crowds as their trainers guided people away from the center of the plaza. And what of the boy himself? Kalen's voice was laced with a mocking pity. A powerful trainer, yes. But his power is no longer his own. It is a borrowed, unstable thing. A profane bond that must be broken, for his own good. And for yours. A spotlight, impossibly bright, flared to life, pinning Ash and Lily in its beam. From the central clock tower, a figure descended, not with a rope, but on the back of a massive, shadowy Corviknight. He landed in the center of the plaza with a quiet thud, the bird taking to the air again to circle above. This was Kalen. He was tall and severe, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite and a fanatic's light burning in his cold blue eyes. He wore a modified version of the Order's uniform, a long black coat over the tactical gear, giving him the look of a high-ranking officer. Ash Ketchum, Kalen said, his amplified voice now coming directly from a speaker on his person. The Master sends his greetings. He invites you to surrender yourself and your circle. Come with us peacefully, and we will sever the bond. We will free you from this curse. The only curse I see is you, Ash shot back, stepping in front of Lily. Pikachu was on his shoulder, cheeks sparking with furious energy. Kalen sighed, a sound of theatrical disappointment. So be it. I had hoped to resolve this without violence. But our master predicted your stubbornness. He raised a hand. Unit Alpha, engage. Subdue the champion's partners. Prioritize non-lethal capture. I will deal with the Alakai Nui myself. The elite soldiers on the rooftops leaped down into the plaza, their movements silent and swift. They landed in perfect formation, cutting off Mallow and Lana from Ash and Lily. A citywide battle had just erupted. Go! Mallow yelled, seeing Ash's hesitation. We can handle these guys. Go help Lily. Mallow and Lana were back-to-back, surrounded. A two-front battle, Mallow grinned, a fierce light in her eyes. Just how I like it. Serena, Magical Leaf. Primarina, Moonblast. Lana commanded, her calm voice a counterpoint to the chaos. The two of them became a whirlwind of coordinated power. Mallow's Serena was a close-quarters combatant, its kicks and dazzling leaf storms disrupting the soldiers' formations, while Lana's Primarina provided powerful, long-range support, its blasts of fairy energy forcing the soldiers to scatter and take cover. They were a perfect team, one handling offense, the other defense, their synergy honed by weeks of training. They weren't just holding their own, they were pushing the elite unit back. In the center of the plaza, Lily was working frantically on her tablet. Ash, their gear is shielded against Pokémon attacks. Electrical and energy-based moves are being diffused. And their capture devices fire a neurodampening agent. One hit, and a Pokemon is paralyzed. So we have to take out the soldiers themselves, Ash concluded grimly. Got it. Kalen took a step forward, pulling a single, dark-colored Pokeball from his belt. You will not interfere. You will face me. Your test begins now. He threw the ball, and the Pokemon that emerged was a nightmare. It was a Bisharp, but larger than any Ash had ever seen. Its blades were honed to a monomolecular edge, and its armor was a matte black that seemed to absorb the light. It was bred for one purpose, to be an executioner. My partner was engineered to be the ultimate anti-type specialist, Kalen said coolly. It has moves to counter any Pokemon you are known to possess. Your fire, your rock, your flying types, all are irrelevant. Pokemon aren't just about types and moves. Ash retorted. They're about heart. Incineroar, let's go. The hulking Fire Cat emerged with a roar, its championship belt gleaming. The Bisharp immediately adopted a low, ready stance. As predicted, Kalen said with a dismissive smirk. Low kick. The Bisharp moved with blinding speed. It wasn't a fire or steel move. It was a fighting-type attack, super effective against the dark-type Incineroar. The kick landed squarely in Incineroar's knee, making the larger Pokemon roar in pain and buckle. Now, Iron Head. The Bisharp followed up instantly, slamming its bladed head into Incineroar's chest. The blow was powerful, brutal. Incineroar, use its momentum. Darkest Lariat. Ash commanded. Even injured, Incineroar responded, spinning into its signature move. It caught the Bisharp in its fiery vortex, but Kalen was prepared. Guillotine. The single word was a death sentence. The Bisharp's arm blades glowed with a terrifying energy. It ignored the damage from the lariat and swung, aiming for the one-hit knockout. Get back! Ash yelled. Incineroar threw itself backward, but the glowing blade still scraped across its chest, leaving a deep, sizzling gash. It fell to one knee, panting heavily, already on the verge of defeat. Kalen was a master strategist, cold and ruthlessly efficient. He had studied Ash, analyzed his every recorded battle, and had come prepared with perfect counters. This wasn't a battle of passion, it was a cold, calculated execution. Ash recalled the wounded Incineroar, his mind racing. Brute force wouldn't work. Kalen was too prepared. He needed to be unpredictable. Lycanroc, I choose you. His dusk form Lycanroc burst onto the field, howling a challenge. The wolf, Kalen noted. Calmly. Its speed is a factor. But its defenses are paper-thin. Bisharp, Stone Edge. He's using Lycanroc's own move against it. Lily gasped from behind Ash. Sharp pillars of rock erupted from the ground, racing toward Lycanroc. Don't dodge it, run on it. Ash yelled. In an incredible display of agility, Lycanroc leaped onto the first pillar, then the next, using the attack as a staircase to get above the Bisharp. Accelerock, now! Lycanroc shot down like a comet, wreathed in stony energy. But Kalen was ready. Sucker Punch. The Dark-type priority move struck first. Bisharp seemed to teleport, appearing above Lycanroc and slamming it down into the ground with a brutal, shadowy fist. Lycanroc lay stunned, its momentum broken. This is not a battle, Ketchum, Kalen said, his voice dripping with condescension. This is a dissection. You rely on emotion, on reckless power. I rely on logic. And logic dictates that you have already lost. Ash gritted his teeth, the taunts hitting their mark. He was being systematically dismantled, his partners defeated by his own predictable strategies. He could feel Lily's mounting fear, the desperate struggle of Mallow and Lana at the edges of the plaza. He had to end this. He had to be better. He looked at Pikachu. His partner looked back, its expression grim but determined. It was time to throw the script away. Okay, Kalen, Ash said, a new, dangerous calm in his voice. No more games. Pikachu, you're up. He recalled Lycanroc. Kalen actually laughed, a short, sharp, humorless sound. Your mascot. Its electric attacks are useless against my Bisharp's defiant ability, which raises its attack every time its stats are lowered. And it has no defense against steel. This is an act of desperation. You talk too much, Ash said. Pikachu, Electroweb. Futile, Kalen sighed. A net of electricity shot toward the Bisharp. As expected, it did minimal damage, but the speed-lowering effect triggered the defiant ability. A red aura flared around Bisharp, its attack power soaring. You see. You're only making it stronger, Kalen mocked. That was the point, Ash said with a sharp grin. Now it's strong, but it's still slow. And it's standing in a puddle. Kalen's eyes widened. He looked down. In the chaos of the battle, a water main had been ruptured, and the Bisharp was standing in a shallow pool of water from Lana and Primarina's earlier attacks. Pikachu, Thunderbolt. Aim for the water. Pikachu. The bolt of lightning didn't hit the Bisharp. It hit the puddle, which exploded in a massive, conducted electrical surge. The Steel-type Pokémon was engulfed, its body seizing as raw, unblockable electricity coursed through it. It roared in agony, its defiant ability useless against this kind of indirect assault. Now, while it's stunned. Iron Tail. Pikachu's tail glowed with a metallic sheen as it shot forward. Kalen, for the first time, looked panicked. Iron Head, block it, he commanded. The two Steel-type moves met with a deafening clang of metal on metal, a shower of sparks erupting between the two Pokémon. They were locked in a struggle of power. He's using logic too, Lily whispered in awe, watching from behind Ash. He used Electroweb not to damage, but to trigger the ability and lower its speed. He used the environment. He's thinking 3 steps ahead. The stalemate couldn't last. The Bisharp, strengthened by Defiant, began to push Pikachu back. It's over, catch him. Kalen snarled. Not yet. Ash yelled. Pikachu, spin. Instead of pushing back, Pikachu used the Bisharp's own force against it. It spun on the spot, turning the Iron Tail into a high-speed drill. The move deflected the Iron Head and, with a sickening crunch, slammed into the joint where the Bisharp's arm met its shoulder. The Bisharp shrieked and staggered back, its arm hanging uselessly at its side. Finish this, Pikachu. Quick attack. Pikachu became a yellow blur, slamming into the off-balance Bisharp and sending it crashing to the ground, unconscious. Kalen stared at his defeated partner, his face a mixture of shock and fury. He had been so sure of his logic, his preparation. He had been beaten by improvisation, by a bond he couldn't quantify, and by a puddle of water. It was illogical. It was infuriating. His defeat was the turning point. The elite soldiers, seeing their commander's ace fall, faltered. Mallow and Lana seized the opportunity, pressing their advantage and swiftly neutralizing the remaining agents. The plaza fell silent, the only sound the distant sirens of approaching police and the panting of trainers and Pokémon. Kalen slowly recalled his Bisharp. He looked at Ash, his fanatic's glare filled with a newfound, personal hatred. This changes nothing, he spat. Our master is not a man who can be defeated by a single battle. He sees the light that binds you. The chaotic energy you wield. He will not stop. He reached into his coat and threw a small, metallic object at Ash's feet. It was a data chip. A message from him to you. So you understand the futility of your resistance. High above, the shadowy Corviknight swooped down. A grappling line dropped, and Kalen grabbed it, ascending rapidly into the night sky just as the first police cars screeched into the plaza. Ash stood panting in the center of the now empty square, Lily, Mallow, and Lana rushing to his side. They were victorious. They had protected the city, defeated an elite enemy unit, and sent the commander running. But it felt like a hollow victory. Kalen's words echoed in his mind. He sees the light that binds you. Ash looked down at the data chip. This wasn't an attack to capture them. It was a test. A public statement. And a personal delivery. The masquerade was over. Now, the master himself was going to speak. Chapter 6, The Vision in a Vice. The silence in Luzaman's office was a fragile skin stretched taut over a chasm of anxiety. The festival of the Alien Star had become the Hawali Siege in the global media. Kalen's broadcast had done its job. The world was no longer just intrigued by Alola's champion, it was afraid. The narrative had shifted overnight. Ash and the Circle were no longer homegrown heroes, they were a potential global threat, wielding an unstable power no one understood. The political pressure on the Ether Foundation, and on Luzaman personally, was immense. The data chip Kalen had left was the source of the silence. It sat on the crystalline desk between them, a tiny sliver of black metal that held a terrifying amount of information. Lily had spent the last 24 hours decrypting it, her fingers flying across her console, her face growing paler with every layer she peeled back. "It's comprehensive," she finally whispered, her voice strained. She projected the chip's contents onto the main view screen. It wasn't just data. It was a weapon. The screen filled with files. There was one for Ash, detailing every major battle he had ever fought, his win-loss record, his known Pokémon, and their movesets. But it went deeper. It included psychological analyses, highlighting his reliance on improvisation, his fierce loyalty, and what it called his reckless emotional volatility. It catalogued his greatest failures, his loss to Richie in the Indigo League, his devastating defeat against Paul at Lake Acuity, the crisis with Greninja in Kalos, framing them not as learning experiences, but as evidence of his instability. Then came the girl's files. Mallow's profile detailed her family history, the restaurant's finances, her deep-seated fear of letting her family down, a fear born from the memory of her mother's passing. It twisted her nurturing spirit into a pathological need for control through service. Lana's file was smaller, but more insidious. It focused on her quiet nature, labeling it as social detachment and emotional suppression. It theorized that her connection to the water was a form of escapism, a retreat from a world she found overwhelming. Lily's was the most brutal. It was a meticulous timeline of her trauma. The Nihilego incident was laid bare, complete with Ether's own classified security footage. Her PTSD, her initial fear of Pokémon, her fraught relationship with her mother, it was all there, analyzed and catalogued with a cold, clinical precision. It concluded that her bond with Ash was not a sign of healing, but a classic case of transference, a desperate attachment to a perceived savior figure. It was a violation. A psychological vivisection designed to shatter their trust in themselves and each other. "They know everything," Mallow breathed, her face ashen. She looked physically ill, as if her deepest secrets had been stolen and put on display. Lana was silent, her hands clenched so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. The cool, serene pond of her presence in their bond was now a frozen lake, her emotions locked down tight. Ash felt a cold, hard rage solidifying in his gut. This was worse than any physical attack. It was an act of profound cruelty. He reached out through the bond, not with words, but with a simple, unwavering feeling, "I'm here. I trust you. This is a lie." He felt a flicker of gratitude from Mallow, a slight thawing from Lana, and a wave of tormented but fierce loyalty from Lily. "This is his strategy," Lily said, her voice shaking with repressed fury. "He's not just trying to beat us in a battle. He's trying to dismantle us from the inside out. To make us doubt the very things that make us strong." "It won't work," Ash stated, his voice a low growl. He looked at each of them, his gaze intense. "What we have is real. It's not something you can put in a file. It's not a weakness. It's our greatest strength. His conviction was a shield, a warm fire against the cold poison of the files. But the damage was done. The seeds of doubt, once planted, were hard to uproot. It was at that moment that the room's secure communication line, a system supposedly impenetrable to outside hacking, chimed. It was a direct, unscheduled channel opening. Luzamin, startled, tapped the console. "Who is this?" "This is a restricted channel." The main view screen, which had been displaying the hateful files, flickered to black. Then, a man's face faded into view. He looked to be in his late 30s, with a calm, handsome face, kind eyes, and a gentle, almost sad smile. He was in a minimalist, white room, the background sterile and nondescript. He looked more like a philosopher than a terrorist. This was Silas. The master. "President Luzamin," he said, his voice calm, melodic, and deeply reasonable. "My apologies for the intrusion. I am Silas. And I believe we have a great deal in common." Luzamin was on her feet, her expression a mixture of fury and shock. "You. After what your people did in Hawali, a regrettable necessity," Silas interrupted smoothly, his expression full of practiced sorrow. "A public demonstration to illustrate a point. But I am not here to speak to the children. I am here to speak to you. Scientist to scientist. Parent to parent." His gaze was magnetic, his sincerity overwhelming. Ash felt an immediate, primal sense of danger that had nothing to do with Pokemon. This man's weapon wasn't power, it was persuasion. "We both know the danger of the primal deities, as my order calls them," Silas continued, his voice dropping to a confidential, intimate tone. "You have seen it firsthand. The Ultra Beasts. Parasitic, invasive, destructive. You sought to control them, to study them. A noble goal, born of a desire to protect your world. I understand that. I admire it." He was preying on her history, on her trauma, but framing it as a virtue. Luzamin was silent, her arms crossed, but she was listening. "My goal is the same as yours," Silas said, leaning forward slightly. "To ensure humanity's future is not held hostage by these chaotic, powerful beings. But your methods, President, were flawed. You sought to control a force of nature. I have learned it is better to neutralize it." The view screen split. On one side was Silas's face. On the other, new footage appeared. It showed a desolate, ruined landscape, a city turned to rubble under a gray sky. "This was my home," Silas said, his voice now laced with a genuine, haunting sadness. "I was a boy when it happened. Two primal deities, a beast of the land and a beast of the sea, awoke to settle an ancient grudge. Our regional champion, a man I idolized, tried to stop them. He failed. His power was not enough. The city, my family, everything was lost. I survived. And I swore that I would never allow such a catastrophe to happen again. Not anywhere." The story was tragic, powerful. It gave his fanaticism a horrifyingly understandable motive. He wasn't a monster seeking power, he was a traumatized survivor desperately trying to prevent history from repeating itself. He was a dark mirror of Ash, his quest born not from a love of partnership, but from the horror of loss. "The bond your daughter shares with the Ketchum boy," Silas said, his gaze shifting to Luzamin, "it is a beacon for that chaos. An amplifier. The Aaliyah Alakai is not a shield for Alola. It is a magnet, drawing the attention of every primal deity, every ultra beast, every cosmic force that would see this world as a playground or a meal. It is a lit match in a world soaked in gasoline." He was twisting her protective instincts into a weapon against her own daughter. "I can offer you a permanent solution," Silas said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "My purification technology. A way to sever the connection between our world and the realms these beings inhabit. A way to neutralize the threat of ultra beasts forever. No more invasions. No more fear. A truly safe Alola for your children, for your grandchildren. All I ask for is your cooperation. Help me bring the boy and his circle in. Let me sever their profane bond, and I will give you the peace you have always sought. The offer was diabolical. It was everything Luzman had ever wanted, absolute safety, a final solution to the threat that had nearly destroyed her family. Ash saw the conflict warring in her eyes. The logical, frightened scientist in her was being tempted by the devil's own bargain. "Mother, no," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. She took a step forward, her eyes pleading. "You can't listen to him. He's a liar. He's a monster." "Am I?" Silas asked gently, his gaze falling on Lily. "Or am I the only one willing to do what is necessary? Your mother understands sacrifice. She was willing to sacrifice everything for what she believed in. What are you willing to sacrifice for, Lily? The fleeting affection of a boy? Or the future of your entire world?" It was then that Lily found her strength. The girl who had once been too scared to touch a Pokémon stood up to the man who had laid her soul bare. "I am not you, Lily," said, her voice clear and ringing with a power she didn't know she possessed. "And my mother is not the woman she once was. We don't sacrifice others for our own safety. We protect them. That's what Ash taught me. That's what this circle is for." She turned to her mother, her eyes blazing. "Mother, look at him. He's using your fear, the same fear that led you to Nihilego. Don't let him do it again. Trust me. Trust us." The raw, desperate honesty in her daughter's voice seemed to break the spell. Luzman looked from Silas's persuasive face to Lily's terrified but resolute one, then to Ash, whose hand now rested protectively on Lily's shoulder. She saw the bond between them, not as a weakness, but as the very thing that had given her daughter the strength to stand up to her, and now to this monster. "My daughter is right," Luzman said, her voice like steel. "My business is with my family. And you are not welcome in it. Get off my channel." Silas's gentle smile finally vanished. For a split second, a flash of cold, reptilian anger crossed his face before it was replaced by a look of profound disappointment. "A pity. I truly had hoped we could be allies." The air in the room suddenly grew cold. The lights flickered and dimmed. A crushing pressure descended, making it hard to breathe. It felt like the pressure of the deep ocean, a psychic weight that pressed in from all sides. "Then I will have to demonstrate the consequences of your choice more directly," Silas's voice echoed, no longer coming from the speaker, but from inside their own heads. The view screen went black. But the image of the office didn't return. Instead, a new image formed, not on the screen, but in their minds. It was a vision. Horrifyingly vivid. They were standing on the peak of Mount Lanakila, but it was a nightmare version. The sky was a roiling vortex of black and red. The league stadium was a smoking ruin. Below, all of Alola was on fire. Hawali City was rubble. The ether paradise was a sinking, burning wreck. The jungles of Akala were a blackened wasteland. They saw the Tapu. They were chained by ethereal, black energy, their bodies drained and withered, their eyes vacant. They were puppets, their power being siphoned away. And in the center of it all, they saw themselves. Mallow, Lana, and Lily were on their knees, their own auras being torn from them, screaming in silent agony. Ash was forced to watch, held in place by an unseen force, his own power, the fire of their bond, being twisted and corrupted into something dark and destructive. "This is the future your resistance will create," Silas's voice whispered in their minds, a serpent in their skulls. "This is the inevitable result of your chaotic bond. It will not save Alola. It will be the beacon that summons its destruction. Surrender now, and this can all be avoided." The vision was so real, so absolute, that it felt like a memory. The psychic pressure was immense, a vice crushing their spirits. Mallow cried out and sank to her knees, clutching her head. Lana's face was a mask of pain, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Lily was shaking uncontrollably, her eyes wide with a terror that dwarfed anything she had felt before. Ash felt it too, the crushing despair, the absolute horror. But mixed with it was a white-hot, defiant rage. This man, this monster, dared to use their love for their home against them, to twist their bond into a weapon of fear. No. He gritted his teeth, the single word a silent roar in his mind. He focused on the bond, the golden threads that connected him to the three girls. He poured every ounce of his willpower, every memory of their courage, their laughter, their strength, into it. He sent Mallow the feeling of her father's pride. He sent Lana the feeling of the calm, deep ocean after the storm had passed. He sent Lily the feeling of her hand in his as they danced, the simple, pure joy of that moment. He wrapped their shared connection in his own unshakable, defiant fire. This is not our future. He projected, his own psychic voice a shout. Against Silas's whisper. This is your fear. And we will not bow to it. The psychic pressure faltered. A golden light, visible only to them, erupted from Ash, flowing through the bonds and enveloping the girls in a warm, protective glow. The horrifying vision flickered, distorted by the raw, defiant power of their unified will. From his sterile white room thousands of miles away, Silas felt it. A sudden, violent pushback. A will of fire that was not just resisting his psychic assault, but actively fighting it. He recoiled, his calm expression breaking into a genuine snarl of surprise and fury. The boy was stronger than he had calculated. The bond was more resilient. The vision shattered. The office came rushing back into view. The psychic pressure vanished. The four of them were left panting, slick with sweat, the phantom smell of smoke and death still lingering in the air. The comms channel was dead. Silas was gone. But his threat remained, no longer a prediction, but a declaration of war. He hadn't just shown them a possible future, he had shown them his plan. Lily, Mallow, and Lana slowly got to their feet, leaning on each other for support. They looked at Ash, their eyes full of a new, terrifying understanding. They had seen their world burn. They had felt their own life force being torn away. And they had seen Ash, their anchor, their son, refuse to break. He's coming, Luzman said, her voice a bare, horrified whisper. That wasn't a vision. That was a promise. Ash walked to the window, looking out at the peaceful blue ocean. His fists were clenched at his sides. He now knew what the Order of Silence truly wanted. It wasn't just to sever their bond. It was to capture it, to corrupt it, to turn their greatest strength into the instrument of Alola's destruction. And they would start at the heart of Alola's power, Mount Lanakila. Chapter 7, The Siege of Lanakila. The sky over Alola was the color of a fresh bruise. A fleet had appeared at dawn, emerging not from the horizon, but from shimmering tears in reality itself, the same cloaking technology the Ether Foundation used, but on a scale that was terrifying. Dozens of sleek, black vessels, shaped like arrowheads, hung silent and menacing in the upper atmosphere. They formed a blockade, a cage around the entire archipelago. There was no grand declaration, no broadcast from Silas. There was only the silent, oppressive presence of his armada. Their target was unmistakable. The fleet was arrayed in a concentric circle, its focus aimed like a spear at a single point, the snow-dusted peak of Mount Lanakila, the highest point in Alola, the seat of the League, and, as Lily had discovered from ancient texts, a place where the lines of telluric energy, the very life force of the islands, converged. He's not just attacking the League, Lily explained, her voice tense. They were gathered in the war room of the Ether Paradise, a place that hadn't been used in generations. On a holographic map, the enemy fleet was a swarm of angry red dots. He's attacking the heart. The texts call Lanakila the Ora Pico, the navel of Alola's spirit. Silas isn't here to conquer Alola. He's here to lobotomize it. The data from the vision, combined with new intelligence, had painted a grim picture. Silas's ultimate weapon was the Aura Siphon, a colossal machine designed to drain the spiritual energy of a region and its guardian deities. His plan was to deploy it at the summit of Mount Lanakila, hook into the Pico, and bleed the Tapu dry, turning them into empty, powerless shells. The vision of them in chains hadn't been symbolic. It was literal. But Alola was not idle. The moment the fleet appeared, the islands roared to life. This was no longer a secret war fought in the shadows. This was an invasion. The Kahunas are mobilizing, Kukui reported, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by the grim focus of a man defending his home. Hala is leading the defense of Mele Mele. Olivia has turned Akala's cliffs into a fortress. Hapu's pony riders are ready. My rangers and all available trial captains are converging on Ulaula. At the base of the mountain, Kiawe's voice crackled over the comms, his fiery spirit a palpable thing. We will hold the pass. They will not set foot on Lanakila's slopes without a fight. Even Guzma's voice, rough and laced with static, patched in from some forgotten corner of Patown. Heh. The boss of Team Skull ain't gonna let some other guy in a stupid costume come and wreck his home. Me and my grunts are ready to bust some heads. Just tell us which ones. The call to arms had been answered. From every corner of the region, trainers, trial captains, kahunas, ether employees, even former villains, were rising as one. They were not fighting for a champion. They were fighting for Alola. Ash stood before the holographic map, the weight of it all on his shoulders. He was the champion, the Alakai Nui. He was the reason Silas was here. The responsibility was a physical thing, a mountain heavier than Lanakila itself. Lily came to stand beside him, placing a hand on his arm. Her touch was a steady anchor. You are not alone in this, Ash. Mallow was on his other side, her expression fierce and determined. They're here for all of us. So we'll fight them. All of us. Lana nodded, her gaze fixed on the mountain. The fire needs the earth, the water, and the sky to burn its brightest. He looked at them, at the unshakable trust in their eyes, and the crushing weight on his shoulders lessened, transformed. It was not a burden to bear, but a power to wield. He was the center of the circle, the heart of Alola's defiance. He took a deep breath and became the leader they needed him to be. Okay, he said, his voice ringing with quiet authority, cutting through the tense chatter of the war room. Here's how we do this. His plan was bold. They couldn't win a defensive war against Silas's superior technology. They had to go on the offensive. They had to cut the head off the snake. The fleet is a distraction, Ash explained, pointing at the map. The real threat is the siphon. They have to land it on the summit. That's Silas's endgame. So that's where we have to hit him. The rest of Alola, the Kahunas, Kiawe, the Ether Fleet, their job is to delay, to bog down Silas's ground forces, to buy us time. They are the shield. We will be the spear. He looked at the three girls, then at Glad Ion, who had arrived with Luzamin, his face a mask of grim determination. Lana, you'll command the naval defense. The Order will try to land forces on Ulaula's coast to flank the mountain. I need you to work with the Ether Fleet and every water-type trainer you can find. Turn the sea into a wall. Don't let a single ship make landfall. Lana nodded, her eyes gleaming with fierce purpose. The sea will not suffer them to pass. Mallow, you're with Kiawe at the mountain pass. You know the terrain, the flora, the Pokemon. Use the jungle itself as a weapon. Create traps, diversions, ambushes. Slow them down. Bleed them. Make them fight for every single inch of ground. Mallow grinned, a predatory, feral expression. They wanted to see Alola's wild side. I'll be happy to introduce them. Lily, he said, his voice softening for a fraction of a second. You're our commander. From this war room, you have eyes on everything. You will coordinate the Kahunas, the naval front, the mountain pass. You will be our guiding mind. Tell us where we are needed most. Lily met his gaze, her own fear eclipsed by a formidable resolve. I will not fail you. And us? Glad Ion asked, stepping forward, silverly materializing at his side with a low growl. Us, Ash said, a grim smile touching his lips. We're going to the top. The main assault force, the best and fastest trainers, will punch a hole through their lines and make a direct path for the summit. You, me, and anyone else who can keep up. We're going to take the fight directly to Silas. It was a declaration of war. Their war. The slopes of Mount Lanakila were a vision of hell. The crisp, cold air was thick with the shriek of laser fire, the roar of Pokémon, and the percussive crump of explosions. The Order's ground forces were a relentless tide of black-clad soldiers and cybernetically enhanced Pokémon, their movements synchronized, their tactics brutal. They moved up the single main path to the summit, a slow, inexorable advance. But Alola was fighting back. At the base of the mountain, in the dense forests of Ulaula, Mallow and Kiawe were waging a guerrilla war. Mallow, perched in the high branches with her decidui, became a forest spirit, a vengeful dryad. Her knowledge of the jungle was absolute. She directed trainers to trigger vine traps that ensnared entire squads of soldiers. She pointed out patches of razor-leaf grass that shredded their vehicles' tires. Hertzarina, a green blur in the undergrowth, moved from skirmish to skirmish, its powerful kicks disabling soldiers' gear and felling their Pokémon with brutal efficiency. Kiawe was the fire to her earth. He and his Turtonator held the main pass, a walking fortress of flame and fury. His Z-move, an inferno overdrive of cataclysmic proportions, had turned the narrowest part of the pass into a molten choke point that the Order's heavy armor could not cross. Out at sea, Lana was an admiral of the abyss. Standing on the deck of an ether frigate, her Primarina at her side, she commanded a vast armada. It was a chaotic mix of ether vessels, sea folk ships, and hundreds of water-type Pokémon from all over Alola, Gyarados, Wailord, Sharpedo, all answering her call. She didn't shout orders. She felt the flow of the battle, the ocean's currents her lines of communication. A subtle gesture of her hand would send a pod of Wailord to surface beneath an Order landing craft, capsizing it. A quiet word to her Primarina would unleash a sparkling aria that confused the guidance systems of incoming aerial drones. She had, as Ash had asked, turned the sea into a living, thinking wall, and it was a wall the Order could not breach. And in the ether war room, Lily was the nexus of it all. Data streamed across a dozen screens around her. She was calm, her voice never rising, her commands precise. Hala, the western flank is weakening. They're using aerial units. Have your flying types intercept. Mallow, a heavy assault vehicle is trying to bypass Kiawe's choke point through the forest to your north. Route Team Skull to intercept. They're itching for a fight. She was magnificent. All her years of study, all her bookish knowledge, had been forged into a brilliant strategic mind. She saw the entire war, a grand, complex chess game, and she was moving the pieces with a master's touch. But the centerpiece of the battle, the tip of the spear, was Ash. He was a blur of motion, a whirlwind of furious energy at the head of the elite assault team. With him were Gladion, his Sylvelia multi-typed weapon of destruction, and Professor Kukui, his academic demeanor shed to reveal the fierce battler beneath, his decidui's arrows flying true. They fought their way up the main path, a wedge designed to break the enemy's spine. Ash was a different trainer today. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. His commands were sharp, instinctive, his bond with his Pokémon absolute. He cycled through his team with blinding speed, each one a perfect counter to the enemy in front of them. Melmetal, double iron bash. Clear a path. The massive Pokémon became a living battering ram, smashing through a barricade of soldiers and their Skarmory. Incineroar, darkest lariat. Cover our flank. The Firecat spun through a squad of Bisharp, its flames a defensive wall. Pikachu, Electroweb. Ground their drones. A net of electricity filled the sky, bringing a swarm of aerial reconnaissance units crashing to the ground. He and Gladion fought side by side, their old rivalry burned away and reforged into a devastatingly effective partnership. Gladion's cold, analytical style was the perfect complement to Ash's passionate, intuitive approach. Gladion would identify a weakness in the enemy line, and Ash would exploit it with overwhelming force. Ash, 3 o'clock. A squad with psychic dampeners. Gladion would yell. Lycanroc, Accelerock. Get in close before they can use them. Ash would command. They pushed relentlessly upward, the summit growing closer, the air thinning, the snow beginning to fall. The battle was taking its toll. Their Pokémon were growing weary. But they could not stop. Ash. Lily's voice crackled over their comms, strained. It's here. A massive transport is breaking through the upper atmosphere. It's on a direct course for the summit. It has to be the Siphon. As she spoke, a colossal black ship, 10 times the size of any other in the fleet, descended from the clouds. It was less a ship and more a flying fortress, bristling with cannons. It ignored the dogfights raging around it, its single purpose to reach the peak. We're not going to make it in time on foot. Kukui yelled over the roar of another explosion. We have to. Gladion gritted out, recalling his exhausted Crobat. Ash looked up at the descending fortress, then at the summit, still a mile of hard fighting away. They were out of time. He closed his eyes for a second, reaching out through the bond. He felt Lily's frantic, calculating mind, Mallow's earthy tenacity, Lana's deep, flowing power. He drew it all in, their collective strength, their shared will. An idea, born of desperation and pure, audacious power, sparked in his mind. He pulled a pokeball from his belt. I've got a faster way. What are you doing? Gladion demanded as Ash turned away from the battle. Ash didn't answer. He held the pokeball aloft. I need you. All of you. Naganadel, I choose you. The Ultra Beast emerged with an otherworldly cry, its massive stinger pulsing with draconic energy. The creature, once a Poipole that had been like a child to him, had returned to Alola during the crisis, drawn to the familiar aura of its friends. Naganadel, I need a ride. A big one. Ash yelled. The Ultra Beast seemed to understand instantly. But it wasn't just Naganadel he was calling. Through the bond, through the very air of Alola, he sent out a call to every flying-type Pokémon in the region, a champion's decree, a friend's plea for help. And Alola answered. From the forests, from the sea cliffs, from the cities, they came. A swarm of Toucanon, a squadron of Braviary, a vast flock of Pelipper, even the shadowy Corviknight Kalen had ridden, now freed from its master. They converged on the slopes of Lanakila, a great winged army answering the call of their Alakai Nui. Gladion, Kukui, grab on. Ash yelled, leaping onto Naganadel's back. He offered a hand to Gladion, who took it without hesitation, scrambling up behind him. The great migration of Pokémon descended on the battlefield, a storm of wings and talons. They didn't just attack. They lifted trainers, carrying them over the enemy lines, creating an aerial bridge of living creatures. They were bypassing the ground war entirely. As Naganadel shot into the sky, leading the charge, Ash saw it. The summit of Mount Lanakila. The Siphon transport had landed, its massive ramp lowering. And standing there, waiting for them, was Silas. He was not alone. He stood calmly amidst a whirlwind of psychic energy, a maelstrom of purple and black. And at the center of that storm, floating silently behind him, was the source of his power. A Pokémon Ash recognized with a jolt of ice-cold horror. It was Mewtwo. But it was wrong. This wasn't the proud, tormented, fiercely independent creature Ash had met years ago. This one's eyes were a dull, vacant purple. Its body was encased in a network of black, metallic armor, similar to the Drapions but far more complex, with glowing tubes pumping a dark energy directly into the base of its skull. Its immense psychic power felt hollow. Enslaved. This was Silas's ultimate weapon, his primal deity, brought to heel. A god in chains. So, Silas's voice echoed in their minds as Naginata landed, Ash and Gladion leaping to the snowy ground. The children have arrived at last. You are just in time to witness the dawn of a new, silent world. The Aura Siphon, a grotesque, multi-legged machine, was already beginning to unfurl from the transport, its central drill aiming for the very spot where Ash had won the league. The final battle for the soul of Alola was about to begin. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.